Novel Empire. Immortal God of Battle. Chapter 361 Heaven-Defying Cloud Crossing. All the demon warriors stood up. After the monk landed on the ground, he clasped his hands together and said, "My Buddha is merciful. You monsters are truly courageous to cause trouble here." With that, the monk's staff flew into the sky. In an instant, white light shone from the staff, and he was about to make a move. Xiang Nan was truly convinced by the monks of Feiyin Temple. However, Feiyin Temple's style was unexpectedly ruthless. "I'm not even talking to you, it's just a single word, do it." However, Xiang Nan admired this monk. Facing so many demon races, he didn't fear him at all. From the looks of it, this monk was only at the 5th level of the origin realm, and there were many demons that were higher than him. "Stop!" Seeing that the battle was about to break out, the man from the black sect immediately stood up and said, "Xiang Nan of the nature sect, dare to ask your name." The monk was slightly stunned when he heard the words Haran sect and said, "Oh. So it's the fellow disciples of the Haran sect. Little monk, Feiyin Temple, is called Yundu." The man from the profound sky sect smiled and nodded. The dragon soars to the 4 seas, and its chi soars into the clouds. So it's senior brother Yun. Feiyin Temple was different from ordinary Buddhist temples. Ordinary Buddhists chanted Buddhist scriptures and cultivated bitterly in meditation. As for Feiyin Temple, it was a martial monk's temple and was tainted with heavy martial arts habits, so its composition was not so tactful. Junior brother Xiang Nan. Monk Yundu clasped his hands together at the man from the heavenly profound sect. "I heard that you shone brightly in the central plains and acted righteously on behalf of my righteous people. I admire you very much," he said. "Senior brother Yundu is flattering me." The black sect man pointed at the monsters and said, "To be honest, these monster race friends are my life and death friends. I hope senior brother Yundu will let them live." Only then did Xiang Nan recall that he had been chasing after the 8-armed heavenly Yao, but he had forgotten that this place was already very close to the Flying Cloud Temple, only about 400 to 500 kilometers away. If a fight broke out, Yundu would summon more monks, and all the demons here would be annihilated. No wonder the man from the heavenly profound sect asked for mercy. "What?" Hearing this, Yundu's expression changed drastically. He said sternly, "You are a righteous disciple of a famous sect, yet you are with the demon race." "What human demon race? All races in the world are originally one family." The disciples of the heavenly profound sect shook their folding fans and sprinkled out a great principle. Yunduchi's mouth trembled. "Junior brother Xiang Nan. Do you know how many humans the demons have eaten and how many innocent creatures they have maimed in the western regions? It's a waste of my respect for you. I didn't expect you to be such a prodigal son with a false reputation. Stop talking nonsense." The man from the profound sky sect shouted, "Aren't you relying on the Flying Cloud Temple? Let me tell you, we are currently competing in martial arts. If you want to bully us, then fight us for 10 rounds. If you win, we will let you handle it. Otherwise, you will scram honestly." "What if I refuse?" Yundu said angrily. "If you don't obey, then our Haran sect and Feiyin Temple will start a war." The man from the profound sky sect shouted loudly, "From now on, our 2 sects will break off." If others said this, Yundu would not care at all. However, he knew that Xiang Nan was already an important figure in the Haran sect and would definitely be nurtured by the Haran sect. If Xiang Nan said it himself today, Yundu could not help but care. Good, good, good. Yunduchi's face turned ashen as he placed his staff on the ground. Since junior brother Xiang Nan insisted on joining the demon race, then let's fight." Yundu was both disappointed and sad, and his heart was filled with anger. "Let me hit you, you stinking monk." A man walked out from the direction of the demon race. That man was tall and sturdy, 3 meters tall. This person was at the 4th level of origin return, and as soon as he came out, he pounced towards Yundu. Before transforming, the demon race members were much taller than humans. After transforming, there were countless people who were 3 meters tall. The demon race relied on its own body advantage and immediately rushed over, wanting to fight Yundu closely. Yundu jumped up and the staff in his hand exploded with white light, knocking the demon male to death on the ground in a single battle. Instantly, his brain slurred and his skull shattered to the ground. So powerful, the human martial artists were all dumbfounded. Killed in one move. Yundu had already won one match. "Let me do it. I'm stepping on the water without any traces." The 4th level of the origin returning demon clan, who had previously won against Jian Wuxue, ran up again. This person was as light as a swallow, and his body swiftly swam around Yundu. His feet stepped on the air, and his body seemed like an afterimage. Yundu placed the staff on the ground, pinched his fingers, and pulled the water-treading traceless finger down. Immediately afterwards, a Wei Tuo's palm came close to him. The terrifying palm force directly pierced through the water-treading traceless chest, causing the water-treading traceless finger to spit out a mouthful of blood and die on the spot. Yundu was already filled with righteous indignation, but now, his attack was even more vicious. "I'll do it." In the front row of the demon race, a 6th level origin returning martial artist walked up. This person's hands were shaped like tiger claws, and both of his hands were filled with black gas. This servant is called the West Sea Heart-Picking Demon. "Today, I will experience the Flying Cloud Temple's high-level moves," the martial artist said. Hearing this, both human martial artists and demon martial artists were shocked. The name Demon Pulling Heart was very famous in the Western region's martial world. Gue Hai Shushin. Black gas surged beneath the demon's feet as he slipped towards Yundu. Both of his tiger claws descended and immediately condensed into 2 enormous demon chi ghost claws. The ghost claw was filled with ghostly aura, and its fingernails flickered with a sharp cold light. Yundu sent out Wei Tuo's palm, causing the heart-piercing demon's body to suddenly twist. After dodging the palm force, it grabbed Yundu's forehead. Yundu used his staff to block the attack, and the ghost claw fiercely tore at the staff, leaving 5 shallow marks on it. The ear-piercing sound caused everyone to feel unstable. Yundu took 2 steps back, his right thumb clasped his 4 fingers and shot out with a buzzing sound. With each ejection, a small ball of impact air burst out from his fingertips, and his 4 fingers were incomparably fierce. The heart-picking demon's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly dodged in panic. As the 4 streams of energy brushed against his body, he heard the sound of the giant tree collapsing. The finger force was simply unstoppable, piercing through all the obstacles in front of him. "What a good move, Duoluo Yi Finger." The Sky Profound Sect man clapped his hands and applauded. Vajra Pestle. Taking advantage of the dodging finger force of the heart-slaying demon, Yundu soared into the air and raised his staff high up. A huge pestle of Yuan Qi appeared in the sky, crushing the heart-slaying demon to death with one pestle. The heart-piercing demon's death was miserable, and his entire body was smashed into meat paste. The group of demons paled in horror. Yundu had already won the second match. Xiang Nan was similarly shocked. He thought to himself that the Buddhist profound arts were indeed vast and profound. Buddhism is collectively known as Buddhism, they are Buddhism. Just this point, then most martial arts sects have a greater advantage. Firstly, all the Buddhist monks used martial techniques and techniques that were interconnected. They could learn from each other. Secondly, the martial arts inheritance of the martial arts sect was much easier to break off. Once the sect dissipated, their martial arts techniques would also scatter in the world, gradually disappearing. However, Buddhist profound arts were not like this. As long as this religion existed, no matter which Buddhist temple was disbanded, other Buddhist temples still retained the inheritance of Buddhist profound arts. Although the Haren sect had inherited it for 1,500 years, the entire Buddhism had existed for countless years. Chapter 362 Xiang Nan's Trick. I'll do it myself. In the first row of the demon race, the man with a tiger's back and a bear's waist walked out. This person was at the 6th level of the origin return realm, but his aura was clearly much stronger than that of the heart-piercing demon. The man with a tiger's back and a bear's waist said to Yundu, "I am a disciple under the golden-eyed tiger throne in the desolate ancient mountain of the western regions, Mo Se Wu Qian. Three-headed golden-eyed tiger." Everyone's bodies trembled. These three golden-eyed tigers were famous old demons in the western regions. It was said that they had cultivated for 500 years and possessed terrifying strength at the middle divine martial stage. None of them had expected that this Mo Se Wu Qian would actually have such a big background. Xiang Nan, on the other hand, paid more attention to Mo Se Wu Qian's name. The other demon races only had nicknames, but this Mo Se Wu Qian had an extremely humanoid name. From the looks of it, the demon race was actually divided into 3 to 9 grades. Some of them not only possessed the names of humans, but also possessed their own sect inheritance. Some of the demons were still relatively beginner. Although their realms weren't low, their intelligence was very average. "Come on." Mo Se Wu Qian's body trembled, and a faint word, "King," appeared on his forehead. Vajra Pestle. Yundu jumped up and stabbed at Mo Se Wu Qian. The enormous Yuan Qi steel pestle descended from the sky, and its wind pressure caused the surrounding ancient trees to break apart and landed on the ground. Tiger Roar Mountain Forest. Mo Se Wu Qian raised her hands high and let out a heaven-shaking roar. The Yuan Qi steel pestle smashed into Mo Se Wu Qian's hand, causing half of her body to be embedded into the ground, but he actually caught this pestle. The entire demon race cheered loudly. "Kill that stinking monk. Big Brother Mose, kill him and make us soup. Get up." Mo Se Wu Qian's legs alternated as he spun up and ferociously lifted the Yuan Qi steel pestle into the air. "Way to a palm." Yundu slapped out a palm, and the invisible palm force quickly smashed away. That Mo Se Wu Qian was very tough. After pushing away the Yuan Qi steel pestle, he forcefully raised his chest and used his chest to receive a palm strike. The palm of Wei Tuo's palm slapped on Mo Se Wu Qian's chest, drawing a palm print that was about an inch deep. Blood spilled out of Mo Se Wu Qian's mouth. He suddenly landed on the ground and ran towards Yundu. He roared, "Tiger King roar! Roar!" The howl of a tiger shook the mountain forest, and Mo Se Wu Qian's entire body was wrapped in demonic energy, turning into a 10-meter-tall black tiger. "I found my true body." Xiang Nan nodded silently. This gigantic black tiger was not condensed from demonic energy, but Mo Se Wu Qian's true body. Yundu flicked his right hand, and the powerful Dorothy finger tore through the air, piercing through the black tiger with a swoosh 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 swoosh. However, the black tiger's body was 10 meters tall, and the finger power of the Duoluo leaf finger had become incomparably small. Even if it pierced through the tiger's body, it would not be able to cause any fatal damage. The astonishing black tiger's claw slapped down and sent Yundu flying. Yundu coughed out a mouthful of blood and forcefully fell to the ground in midair. Diamond body protection. Yundu clasped his hands together and held the staff in the middle. The black tiger had already pounced over. Its huge tail was like an indestructible steel whip, heavily sweeping across Yundu's Yuan Qi shield. A loud bell rang out, like the melodious bell in the ancient Twilight Mountains. Yundu was swept across a distance of 7 to 8 meters. The Yuan Qi shield was also swept into the hole, turning into an oval shape, but the shield did not break. Big way to a palm. Yundu slashed his palm and a huge Yuan Qi palm flew out from the ground. Peng sound hit Mo Se Wu Qian's tiger head. The gigantic black tiger's body was suddenly sent flying. The tiger's body rapidly rotated in the air, sprinkling blood mist all over the sky. When it landed again, the black tiger's forehead had already cracked, and the giant tiger could no longer stand steadily. The group of demons were shocked. Although Mo Se Wu Qian had not been killed, he had already lost. Yundu welcomed the third victory. "Damn it, I'll do it." At this time, a person walked out from the demon race crowd, but before he could speak, his body slightly swayed and he sat on the ground. "What?" The group of demons were shocked and hurriedly stood up. Everyone pointed at Yundu and shouted, "Stinking monk, what method did you use? Could it be that you've poisoned him?" Yundu was also a little surprised, but he disdained to talk to these monsters. However, the demon clansmen were shouting and cursing, but all of them felt dizzy and collapsed to the ground. Not only them, but even the human martial artists also fell limply. This is Xiang Nan's heart sank. Ha 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 ha. The man from the profound sky sect walked out and smiled. "You scum, you want to be with me, Xiang Nan. You deserve it. This young master has already poisoned the pills he gave you. In a short while, all of you will die." The black sect man laughed wildly. "This young master has already poisoned the pills for you." "Oh." Yundu's expression softened slightly, but he frowned and said, "So junior brother Xiang Nan was planning to kill them. I was wrong about you. However, this kind of method is not very open and honest. Junior brother Xiang Nan should use it less in the future." "Stinking monk, what qualifications do you have to teach me a lesson?" The Sky Profound Sect man repeatedly sneered. "This young master is worrying about these so-called experts just to find the Devil Seed token on their bodies. Monk Yundu, you don't have to leave today." As soon as he finished speaking, the other 4 Heavenly Profound Sect disciples immediately split into 2 groups. 2 of them went to search for the demon race and 2 for human martial artists. Xiang Nan suddenly realized that this Heavenly Profound Sect man was originally here for the Devil Sea token. No wonder he summoned these people here and tricked them into swallowing the pills. The reason why he chose the boss in the bullshit competition was clearly to retain everyone and make everyone wait for the poison to spread. For a moment, both the demon race and human race martial artists cursed at the black sex man. "Xiang Nan, you son of a bitch. We trusted your words in vain. You're actually so shameless. I knew there were no good people in the Haran sect. We were all tricked by this brat." The 8-armed heavenly Yao who was sitting on the ground sneered, "What bullshit, Xiang Nan. You only used such dirty methods. What ability do you have? I met a brat last night. That brat is very powerful. He chopped off 3 of my tentacles in a row. Presumably, that brat is on the verge of chasing me to this place. At that time, I'll see how you kneel down and beg for mercy." "Oh." The man from the profound sky sect smiled faintly, someone can cut off 3 tentacles of your 8-armed heavenly Yao? I presume that he must be an expert at the 7th level of the Origin Gui realm or above. Haha. 8-armed heavenly Yao laughed loudly. To tell you the truth, he is only at the 4th level of Origin Return. Hearing this, the man from the Profound Sky sect smiled and shook his head. Nonsense. It seems that you are too poisoned. You are talking in your sleep. Even if it's really as you said, that brat really came, why would he hurt me? We're all human beings. The 8-armed heavenly Yao was stunned and immediately choked speechless. Senior Brother Xiang, I think there are still a few people who haven't been poisoned. A heavenly profound sect disciple asked curiously. The fake Xiang Nan of the Xuanzong sect hurriedly looked over, as expected. 3 of the humans didn't take any pills and were still sitting there. There were also 2 monsters who hadn't eaten any medicinal pills, and they weren't injured at all. One of the 2 monster clansmen was Chen Hengjuan. It doesn't matter. The Sky Profound Sect man waved his hand and said, these people, just kill them. Xiang Nan stood up with a faint smile on his face and said to the disciples of the Heavenly Profound Sect, this is the Xiang Nan of the Nature Sect, isn't he? The Black Sect disciple sneered, I am the one. Xiang Nan nodded, I have to thank you for helping me a lot. Otherwise, it would be a headache for me to tidy up these monsters one by one. Chapter 363. Not a single word agree. Is it Brother Xiang Bei? It really is you. Chen Hengjuan was overjoyed as he jumped up from the ground and walked towards Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan smiled bitterly. Changing his appearance could make others unable to recognize him, but Chen Hengjuan knew his voice. The monk Yundu was the one who had the biggest headache on the scene. He originally thought that he had misunderstood that Xiang Nan, but that Xiang Nan was actually trying to poison the evil beasts of the demon race to death. However, when he heard Xiang Nan threatening him, he realized that he was mistaken. That Xiang Nan only wanted the Devil Sea token. After Xiang Bei stood up, Yundu heard what Xiang Bei and Xiang Nan said and thought that Xiang Bei was a good person. But now, Chen Hengjuan, a demon male, called Xiang Bei brother. Obviously, Xiang Bei was not a good person. Yundu's expression eased up, and his expression became angry. He looked at this and that. He was originally a monk from a monastery. His mind was simple, and he did not understand so many human sophistication. For a moment, he was confused by the complicated relationships between these people. At this point, Yundu was enraged. He placed his staff heavily on the ground and shouted, none of you can leave. Follow me back to Feiyin Temple. As he spoke, Yundu raised his right hand and shot out a dense white yuan qi into the air. The yuan qi exploded in the sky and condensed into a simple, vajrapesal shape. This monk is called reinforcements. Xiang Nan's heart sank and he said to Chen Hengjuan, Brother Chen, hurry up and leave. When the people from Feiyin Temple arrive, you will really not be able to leave. I am a human, and I am not afraid of them. You want to leave? The Black Sect man laughed coldly, with this young master here, no one can leave. Chen Hengjuan patted Xiang Nan's shoulder and said, Brother Xiang, what did you say? I said I wanted to protect you. How could I be afraid of dying and leave you here alone? Xiang Nan had no choice but to attack Chen Hengjuan. However, at this moment, the Black Sect disciples had already attacked him, and Yundu had already charged towards Chen Hengjuan. The two of them immediately separated and responded to each other. The Xuanzong man held a huge saber in his hand and slashed at Xiang Nan fiercely. A huge crescent saber light flew towards him. Xiang Nan also pulled out his dragon blood saber and chopped out a huge crescent blade light. Ha! I recognize this saber. It's him. The eight-armed heavenly Yao saw Xiang Nan's weapon and immediately laughed out loud. He saw two enormous crescent saber lights collide. In the blink of an eye, Xiang Nan's saber light sliced open the saber light of the heavenly profound sex man and continued to shoot towards the heavenly profound sex man. The Xuanzong man's expression changed. He slipped past Xiang Nan's saber light and arrived at Xiang Nan. The giant saber in his hand slashed 3 times at Xiang Nan's body. Xiang Nan raised his saber to face the battle, and the yuan qi on the saber was tyrannical, and the saber momentum opened and closed. The two of them struck 3 times in a row, causing the Xuanzong man to constantly retreat, and his hand that was holding the hilt of the saber began to tremble. In the 4th slash, Xiang Nan slanted his saber in and used the tip of his saber to hit the hilt of the heavenly profound sect man. Following that, the giant saber in the heavenly profound sect man's hand was immediately taken flying. Good boy, you're using your saber well. You can actually get an advantage from me, Xiang Nan. The black sect man flew up and grabbed the huge saber. When he landed, he shouted, "Azure Dragon, go out to sea." As he spoke, he stabbed the huge saber into the ground and slammed it fiercely towards Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan did not intend to reveal his identity at this moment. He first took 2 steps forward and inserted a huge saber into the back of the heavenly profound sect man's saber. He used his saber to hook the enemy's saber. After that, Xiang Nan quickly retreated. The Xuanzong man's Azure Dragon going out to sea had originally charged forward, but now, it was being hooked back by Xiang Nan, and instead, it was moving even faster. However, when Xiang Nan hooked him back, he intentionally pulled the angle instead of retreating in a straight line. Instead, he drew a huge arc in the open space. As a result, the Xuanzong man's Azure Dragon was diverted from the sea and was taken away by Xiang Nan. It actually drew a huge semicircle. The giant saber in Xiang Nan's hand shook and swung, and then the inertia of the sky profound sect man's charge sent him flying. Ah! The heavenly profound sect man was shocked and hurriedly turned around, but Xiang Nan had already caught up to him. Xiang Nan slashed at the head of the man from the profound sky sect. The man hurriedly turned his head and dodged. However, he was kicked by Xiang Nan's leg and knelt on the ground. Following that, Xiang Nan raised his saber and wanted to take the enemy's head away. That day, the disciples of the Xuanzong sect encountered danger and could no longer continue to pretend. They could only throw away the huge saber in their hands and exchange it for a folding fan to fight against Xiang Nan. His folding fan suddenly spun wildly, sending out 6 light shadows of origin energy folding fans, flying towards Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan leaned back heavily, his back almost touching the ground. He dodged all 6 yuan qi folding fans and smiled, "Didn't you use a knife in Xiang Nan?" The black sect man said ferociously, "This young master doesn't need to use a knife to kill you." As he spoke, the man from the profound sky sect jumped up high and shouted, "Twin origin sea tide." He waved the folding fan in his hand towards Xiang Nan, and an earth-shattering gale of yuan qi blew towards Xiang Nan. The gale was not a wind, but was composed entirely of yuan qi. In addition, it was divided into 2 groups of yuan qi tornadoes along the way, entangling each other and attacking towards Xiang Nan in a staggered manner. Xiang Nan's saber sliced out a ray of saber light. After hitting one of the yuan qi tornadoes, the saber light was actually bounced away. When the 2 tornadoes had just merged and separated, Xiang Nan took a step forward and passed through the middle of the 2 tornadoes. However, the 2A tornadoes were extremely strange. They actually turned around and continued to chase after Xiang Nan. For Yuan Tide. The man waved his folding fan, and 2 more Yuan Qi tornadoes formed. For huge Yuan Qi tornado es traveled unhindered on the battlefield, chasing after Xiang Nan everywhere. The best way to deal with such a tornado was to forcefully attack. Just use the Azure Dragon to head to the top, but Xiang Nan still didn't intend to reveal his identity. He could only swiftly dodge within the 4A tornado es, and constantly chopped at the Sky Profound Sect man with his saber light. This brat! Cold sweat dripped down the foreheads of the disciples of the Heavenly Profound Sect. They were shocked in their hearts. They thought to themselves that this enemy was so powerful that he actually had time to counterattack them while the 4A tornado es were chasing him. Xiang Nan's blade radiance was so sharp that the disciples of the Heavenly Profound Sect were unable to handle it, and they almost had to be slashed at the waist several times. On the other side came the roar of a lion that resounded through the jungle. Chen Heng's entire body was filled with demonic aura, like a majestic lion. Yun Du flicked his right hand, and the powerful Duo Luo Yi finger shot out. Chen Hengjuan soared into the air, his body spinning rapidly, dodging all 4 fingers and slapping Yun Du with his palm. This palm was filled with demonic energy, condensing into a giant lion's claw. Clang! The lion's claw slapped the staff and sent Yun Du's staff flying. The strength of this slap was evident. Chapter 364 Demon Monk and Human Fighting. Vajra Pestle. Yun Du flew up and a huge Yuan Qi steel pestle descended from the sky, striving to smash Chen Hengjuan to death. Chen Hengjuan originally had enough time to dodge the pestle, but he discovered that he and Xiang Nan were standing in a straight line. If he dodged, the pestle would definitely hit Xiang Nan. He forcefully received a pestle, and his fists continuously shot out towards the sky. Hundreds of black fists of demonic energy landed on the steel pestle that descended from the sky with clanging 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 clanging. Brother Xiang, hide. Chen Heng bought some time, and he didn't forget to remind Xiang Nan when he jumped away. Xiang Nan immediately turned around and leapt out. The Yuan Qi steel pestle landed with a bang, smashing the 2 Yuan Qi tornadoes into pieces. The Yuan Qi steel pestle was also shredded by the 2 tornadoes. Stinking monk, you're ruining my good fortune. The disciples of the Black Sect waved their folding fans at Yun Du and grabbed at him with their large hands full of Yuan Qi. Big way to a palm. Yun Du slapped out a palm, and the huge Yuan Qi palm collided with the Yuan Qi palm. The Yuan Qi palm's 5 fingers were sharp, unexpectedly piercing into the back and palm of the Yuan Qi palm. The power of the Great Way to a palm was boundless, and with a single thud, it shattered the Yuan Qi hand on the spot and continued to fly towards the disciples of the Heavenly Profound Sect. Good opportunity. Chen Hengjuan laughed loudly and pounced towards the disciples of the Black Sect. Chen Hengjuan bent his body and sprinted wildly. A huge demonic lion appeared on his body. This lion was engulfed in a tyrannical black flame, and its power was astonishing. When the disciples of the Black Sect faced the attacks of Great Way to Apam and Chen Hengjuan, they saw him raise his folding fan and shout, "Qi shakes mountains and rivers." The folding fan flew up into the sky and quickly grew larger. It turned into a large fan that was 20 meters wide and 10 meters tall. There was a strange map of mountains and rivers on the big fan. At this moment, the map of mountains and rivers seemed to have come to life. When the terrifying folding fan slapped down, it actually shattered Great Way to Apam and tossed Chen Hengjuan away together. When Yun Du saw the opportunity, he held on to his staff and stabbed towards Chen Hengjuan. "Be careful." Xiang Nan caught up with his saber and slashed Yundu's staff down. Helping the evil. Yundu was furious and slapped Wei Tuo's palm at Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan was very familiar with this move and easily dodged it. He glanced behind him and saw that Chen Hengjuan had already fought with the man from the Profound Sky sect, so he felt relieved. He didn't have to worry that much about this Yundu. Xiang Nan's saber trembled, and a sharp lightning bolt immediately shot out. Then, the saber chased after him and struck the staff again. Yundu let out a muffled snort. He felt that his saber power was boundless. He was actually sent flying by the staff. Moreover, the right hand that was holding the staff just now had its mouth split open. Flower-picking finger. Yundu hurriedly used his flower-picking finger to pull Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan's entire body was wrapped in lightning, and he instantly accelerated to rush behind Yundu. He instantly withdrew the lightning back into his body and knocked Yundu on the back of his neck with the hilt of his saber, causing him to stagger. The Heavenly Profound Sect's man was only focused on dealing with Chen Hengjuan. He didn't see the lightning from Xiang Nan earlier, but the corner of his eye caught a glimpse of Xiang Nan knocking Yundu out. That day, the disciples of the Black Sect felt their hearts tremble. They thought to themselves, when this kid fought with them just now, he clearly wasn't that powerful. Why did he look like a different person in an instant? Or was it that that brat's strength did not increase, but Yundu's strength was not enough? Thinking of this, the man from the Profound Sky sect immediately became complacent. The monks from the Feiyin temple weren't that amazing. Something's wrong. The Heavenly Profound Sect man was stunned again. Earlier, Chen Hengjuan and the abnormal Yundu were inextricably linked. It could be said that they were evenly matched. In that case, he should be able to easily win against Chen Hengjuan. Why was he helpless against Chen Heng even after fighting with him for a long time? Senior brother Xiang Nan, I found it. Not far away, a disciple of the Heavenly Profound Sect happily raised a devil seed token and said, "We really found one." Ha! The man from the Profound Sky sect was immediately overjoyed. I actually found it. On the other side, Yundu was knocked out by Xiang Nan with the hilt of the saber. He knew that Xiang Nan had spared his life. Otherwise, why would Xiang Nan use the hilt of the saber? If he used the blade, wouldn't his head be separated? Thank you for showing mercy, friend. That Yundu's brain wasn't very nimble, so how could he suddenly turn around and thank him during the battle? However, Xiang Nan's next saber strike had already struck him. Yundu was shocked. He hurriedly put his hands together and shouted, "Diamond body protection." Xiang Nan originally intended to restrain Yundu, but seeing that Yundu thanked him, he hurriedly withdrew some of his strength. However, in this way, the giant saber struck the Yundu Yuan Qi shield and rebounded with a buzzing sound. Xiang Nan had already begun to retract his strength, and with this rebound, the back of the giant saber had actually landed heavily on Xiang Nan's shoulder. Xiang Nan was stunned. "Good monk, you actually used a trick." Yundu was wronged and couldn't help but complain in his heart. He originally intended to explain to Xiang Nan, but a huge folding fan suddenly pressed down from behind. "Brother Xiang, be careful, this big fan is very powerful." Chen Hengjuan rushed back, and he crossed the cloud crossing and pushed Xiang Nan away. The big fan landed on the ground. Yundu held onto the diamond body protection and his entire body was nailed to the ground. In order to save Xiang Nan, Chen Heng used all of his demonic energy to pounce on him. Before he could protect himself, he was actually slapped on the ground by the big fan. By the time the fan was raised, Chen Heng was already lying on the ground coughing up blood. "Brother Chen!" Xiang Nan roared angrily. That scene caused Xiang Nan's eyebrows to crack. He raised his saber and pointed it at the disciples of the heavenly profound sect. The Yuan Qi in his body had already entered a berserk state. "Shameless villain, I must kill you today." At this moment, a faint chanting sound suddenly occurred to Tsong Yun. It sounded like dozens of people were chanting scriptures together. Xiang Nan thought to himself that things were not good, and he didn't have the mood to kill the disciples of the heavenly profound sect anymore. He hurriedly helped Chen Hengjuan up and shouted, "Brother Chen, hurry up and leave. If you don't leave now, it will be too late." Blood flowed out of Chen Hengjuan's ears, eyes, mouth, and nose. However, he said, "It doesn't matter. If I leave Brother Xiang behind, then what kind of hero would I be? How dare you be a hero at this time?" Xiang Nan was both moved and angry. He slapped Chen Hengjuan on the shoulder and said, "Hurry up and leave. Feiyin Temple will at most capture me and not kill me. Don't worry." As he spoke, Xiang Nan grabbed Chen Hengjuan's back and used the Azure Dragon Strike to use Chen Hengjuan as a saber, throwing him into the distance and shouting, "Don't come back." This Azure Dragon was used strangely in the sea, and the Black Sect man did not recognize it. However, when Chen Heng was thrown out by Xiang Nan, neither Yundu nor the Sky Profound Sect man intended to let him off. At this moment, Yundu had already jumped into the air, and a gigantic Yuan Qi steel pestle descended from the sky. The man from the Profound Sky sect also stepped on the treetop and slammed down with his huge folding fan. The Yuan Qi in Xiang Nan's body exploded, and the giant saber swiftly slashed across the ground with 15 slashes. The 15 blades condensed into a 20-meter-long saber light. Shocking dragon sunshine. The enormous saber light rose up from the ground, resisting both the Yuan Qi steel pestle and the huge folding fan at the same time. Under this tremor, Yundu and the Sky Profound Sect man spat out a mouthful of blood at the same time and all flew backwards. As for Xiang Nan, he gritted his teeth and clenched his huge saber, his eyes flushed red with anger. That day, the Xuanzong man was incomparably shocked. He and Yundu attacked together, but they were actually unable to defeat that 4th-level Guiyuan brat. Chapter 365 Feiyin Temple Dungeon. My Buddha is merciful. A total of 50 Feiyin Temple monks surrounded them, and all 50 of them stepped on the green leaves on the treetops, surrounding everyone. Not good, it's a martial monk from Feiyin Temple. The Xuanzong man was shocked, but he wasn't particularly afraid. Xiang Nan also stopped his movements. No matter how conceited he was, it was impossible for him to defeat 51 experts from the Flying Cloud Temple. Senior brother Yundu, on the treetop, a monk held a staff and said, "What should we do with these people?" Yundu wiped off the blood from the corner of his mouth and put his hands together. "All the monsters have surpassed their limits. All humans will be brought back to the temple to be ordered by the Commandment Academy." The monks nodded and landed one after another. They held long sticks in their hands and smashed all the demons to death on the spot. This scene caused the corners of Xiang Nan's eyes to twitch. The Flying Cloud Temple treated humans well, but when it came to the demons, they would never let go of them even if they could kill them. They didn't even frown when they killed the demons. "Stinking monk! Do you still dare to capture me?" The Black Sect man shouted at Yundu, "You are from the Feiyin Temple, I am from the Haran sect, and both of us are decent sections. What right do you have to arrest me?" Yundu clasped his hands together and said, "Little monk doesn't dare to capture junior brother Xiang Nan." I only ask junior brother to settle down in the temple. I will naturally invite the Haran sect elder to come and bring you here later." These words were pleasant to hear, but in fact, they still had to be captured. The heavenly profound sect man was helpless, but since he had already found one, he didn't care anymore and could only leave with the monks. As for Xiang Nan and the other human martial artists, they didn't receive such good treatment. All of them were tied up by the monks using Yuan Qi light ropes and flew away with them. The Commandment Academy was the law enforcement agency of Feiyin Temple. Xiang Nan and the others were all brought over and interrogated by the headmaster. Actually, they said it was an interrogation, but they basically didn't give Xiang Nan and the others a chance to explain. One of the elders of the academy said, "You are humans, but you are with the demons. You will be thrown into the dungeon this time. You will be imprisoned for 3 years. After 3 years, you will naturally be released." With that, Xiang Nan was forced into the dungeon of Feiyin Temple without knowing whether to laugh or cry. On the other hand, the Xuanzong man was treated fairly well, and he and the other 4 were placed under house arrest in a Dhyana room. The Flying Cloud Temple was incomparably large, and even the dungeon was the same. The western regions were too chaotic. Feiyin Temple would often capture some evil human martial artists and imprison them in dungeons. This dungeon had a total of 18 floors underground, meaning 18 floors of hell. Xiang Nan's crime was not serious, and he was locked up on the 3rd floor. In the dark and damp dungeon, Xiang Nan was speechless. At the same time, he mocked himself, "I came over 1,000,000 kilometers to Feiyin Temple to be a prisoner." His weapon had already been taken away, so he used his hand to knock on the dungeon's cage twice. This cage had been weather-beaten for thousands of years. It was already stained with rust, but it was unexpectedly strong. Xiang Nan probed and discovered that even if a heaven scrying realm expert came, he would not be able to break through such a cage. However, if he were to be imprisoned here for 3 full years, it would definitely not be possible. I wonder how Brother Chen is doing now. Sigh. I've implicated him. Xiang Nan sighed and said, "I really can't. I can only use the Void Stone to escape." Inside the dungeons on both sides, the poisoned human martial artists were still powerless. They just lay on the wet ground and cursed loudly. Xiang Nan took a deep breath. Suddenly, a layer of black lightning appeared on his body. Then, his entire body rushed up vertically. With this charge, the sturdy cage was completely useless, and Xiang Nan directly fused with it and pierced through it. Xiang Nan calculated the distance. With this charge, he would definitely be in midair outside. He would then run away. But in the end, he was stunned. With this charge, he discovered that he was still in the cage. The price of using the Void Stone was a serious blur of consciousness. Xiang Nan rubbed his temples and grabbed the railing as he slowly sat down. He felt dizzy and the world was spinning. However, after waiting for a while, he realized that although this place was not the outside world, it was not his 3rd dungeon anymore. He sensed the Yuan Qi fluctuations of the human martial artists on the 3rd floor and discovered that he was actually on the 18th floor. This Xiang Nan was stunned. This Flying Cloud Temple's dungeon is really strange. I clearly flew up vertically, but I flew to the 18th floor underground. Feiyin Temple had been passed down for a long time, and the dungeons were filled with mysteries that made Xiang Nan confused for a moment. Suddenly, a long sigh came from the shadow of the dungeon. Xiang Nan's heart suddenly trembled. A wisp of lightning flashed through his eyes and he looked towards the shadows. He was instantly stunned when he saw this. In that shadow, there was actually an old monk who was as thin as firewood imprisoned. This old monk seemed to be 80 or 90 years old on the outside, but there was no way to guess his actual age. Moreover, he was as thin as firewood, and his skinny skin and bones were gone. If he hadn't heard his sigh, Xiang Nan would have thought that it was just a dried corpse. What was even more terrifying was that the old monk's entire body had been pierced through by 13 chains: his arms, shoulders, hands, legs, feet, and collarbones. The scene was very tragic. Curious, Xiang Nan hurriedly put his hands together and said, "Master, why are you imprisoned here?" The old monk let out a long sigh and said, "What is love in the world? It teaches people how to live and die." Ah! Xiang Nan's eyes almost flew out. It was an old saying that described love and hate between men and women. There were countless people in the world who said it, but it was strange to hear it from this monk. It has been 100 years since anyone spoke to this poor monk. The old monk slowly raised his head. His face was also very thin, and his eyes were sunken. Xiang Nan knew from his tone that as long as he talked to him, he would most likely answer. He chatted with the old monk first and asked the reason of the matter tactfully. Xiang Nan didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but he also felt deeply sad. It turned out that this old monk was the current abbot's junior apprentice brother. More than 100 years ago, he was also a supreme genius with a reputation. He was too obsessed with martial arts, so he secretly modified the Buddhist profound arts, and based on the Buddhist profound arts, he created an incomparably powerful cultivation method. However, that kind of cultivation technique was a bit too fierce. After cultivating for a long time, this old monk actually moved the mortal heart. What was even more ridiculous was that he actually fell in love with a demon woman in a daze. Back then, when he was planning to take the demonic woman to the horizon, his fellow disciples from the Commandment Academy caught up to him and attacked him. In that battle, this old monk had actually killed and injured more than 100 disciples of the Commandment Academy on his own. In the end, his martial uncle had personally subdued him. As a result, he was deeply sinful and was sent to the 18th floor of the dungeon, where he was imprisoned until today. After hearing this story, Xiang Nan also let out a long sigh and said, "Master, do you still hate me?" The old monk shook his head and said, "I don't hate you anymore. I only blame myself for being sinful and regretful." Chapter 366. A handsome man. Xiang Nan respectfully knelt down opposite the old monk and sighed, "I don't think Master did anything wrong. It's just that you should be punished for injuring your fellow disciples. It can only be said that the world is fickle, but the world is too stupid." This sentence was very touching, because Xiang Nan felt it. In his previous life, he had been killed by the woman he loved the most, and this old monk had been imprisoned for more than 100 years for the sake of the woman he loved the most. The old monk stared straight into Xiang Nan's eyes with his cloudy eyes. His gaze was very strange, as if he was seriously looking at Xiang Nan, but it was more like he was completely ignoring Xiang Nan. His gaze pierced through Xiang Nan and saw the icy wall behind him. Xiang Nan had never felt this way before. He had once been seen by a high-level expert. It was as if his entire body wasn't wearing a single strand of clothes, and he had been thoroughly seen by others. However, this old monk didn't feel that uncomfortable looking at him. While Xiang Nan was at a loss, the old monk took action without warning. He pointed his index finger between Xiang Nan's eyebrows at lightning-fast speed. An incomparably intense white light suddenly pierced through the space between Xiang Nan's eyebrows and pierced out from the back of his head. However, strangely enough, Xiang Nan did not have any piercing wounds on his head. However, Xiang Nan felt a splitting headache and fell to the ground. His entire body was convulsing violently, as if he was suffering from the torment of hellfire. Xiang Nan's face turned purple from the pain and he hugged his head in pain. Big Master, why are you doing this? The old monk nodded and said, you are a chivalrous person, but you have a strong hatred in your heart. This finger of mine is self-created. It's called the demon subduing finger. Anyone who harbors the slightest malice towards others in their hearts will only need to receive my demon subduing finger to dissipate. Even if it's an ordinary citizen, they still have evil intentions in their hearts. They will die if they receive a finger from me, but you're not dead. This means that you only harbor a single word of kindness toward strangers. I saw you being thrown into the dungeon and thought that you were a villain. After chatting with you, I wanted to execute you. Who would have thought that this would be the result? Are you in pain now? Xiang Nan's lips trembled from the pain and he said, it hurts so much. The old monk nodded and said, although you have good intentions, you still have a deep hatred. This hatred is not evil, that's why you are suffering so much. Looks like you are very similar to me when I was young. I don't want you to follow in my footsteps. Come, I'll teach you a part of the Heart Sutra. Remember it well. This Heart Sutra can relieve your pain. As he spoke, the old monk closed his eyes. He clasped his hands together, and his mouth moved gently as he read out obscure and profound scriptures. Xiang Nan endured the indescribable pain and forced himself to meditate cross-legged. Strangely, when he hadn't cultivated the Heart Sutra yet, the pain had lessened a little when the old monk said it himself. Afterwards, he followed the Heart Sutra to cultivate, and the pain on his body became fainter and fainter. After cultivating a large portion of the Heart Sutra, Xiang Nan was surprised to discover that he was no longer in pain and was extremely miraculous. The old monk clasped his hands together and said, go back where you came from. Come back here at this time tomorrow. Xiang Nan hurriedly clasped his hands respectfully at the old monk. Junior has gone. After saying that, Xiang Nan activated the void stone and pierced through the cage. This time, he continued to charge upwards, but returned to his cage on the 3rd floor. Strangely enough, the power of the void stone allowed him to walk freely in the dungeon, but no matter how he walked, he would not be able to get out. Sitting in the dark and damp dungeon, Xiang Nan repeatedly recited the Heart Sutra in his heart and couldn't help but start circulating. When he circulated the Heart Sutra, he felt that he had a feeling of transcendence. It was as if all the grudges and enmities in the mortal world had just passed by. Things in the world were unpredictable and chaotic. This rolling mortal world was a great sea of bitterness, and a person was a lonely boat that followed the wind and waves in the sea of bitterness. No matter how capable a person was, they could only be able to escape the sea of bitterness from the heavens and earth, and would never be able to escape the entanglement of the sea of bitterness. Greed, hatred, and idiotism made one unable to extricate themselves from it. Only by jumping out and leaving the 7 emotions and 6 desires could one be at ease. Xiang Nan suddenly opened his eyes. He didn't know why he suddenly had such a wonderful idea in his heart. At that moment, he felt that he was isolated from the world. This Heart Sutra is very wonderful. Xiang Nan couldn't help but get excited and continue to meditate. His excitement also faded. For the next 3 days, Xiang Nan would go to the 18th floor every day to look for the old monk, and that old monk would impart a large portion of Xiang Nan's Heart Sutra. On the 4th day, Xiang Nan was about to continue to go to the 18th floor to look for the old monk to study, but footsteps came from the dungeon corridor. Xiang Nan did not dare to leave, so he obediently waited for the sound of footsteps to pass. Unexpectedly, the sound of footsteps was getting closer and closer. It was actually 2 monks from the Commandment Academy who walked over with a handsome and delicate man. Xiang Bei, someone has come to see you." After saying that, the two little monks took 10 steps back and waited quietly not far away. "Look at me." Xiang Nan was surprised. He looked at the handsome man's face and inhaled a breath of cold air. "You don't want your life anymore." The man lifted his hood and smiled at Xiang Nan. "Good brother, do you miss me?" Xiang Nan exclaimed, "This is an important Buddhist land. You actually dare to barge in? Aren't you afraid of being killed by the people of Feiyin Temple?" That man was none other than Dream Butterfly, who was disguised as a man. Meng Dai put her index finger on her lips and said, "Shoo, they don't know that I'm a woman. I can hide it from everyone with my kung fu. Good big brother, little Dai has been waiting for you for a few days. I didn't see you looking for me, so I took the initiative to look for you. Later, I found out that you were captured by the people of Feiyin Temple after many inquiries. You must have suffered a lot these past few days. Little Butterfly has brought you delicious food." As she spoke, Dream Butterfly picked up the basket from the ground and opened the brocade covering it. Inside was a pile of delicate dishes. Meng Dai pursed her lips and said discontentedly, "There was originally a lot of delicious meat, but those smelly monks didn't let me bring it in." Xiang Nan didn't know what to say. He could only bring in plates of vegetables from the cracks in the cage and eat as he said, "After I finish eating, hurry up and let them find out that you are a demonic woman. They will definitely kill you. There are many high-ranking monks here. Do you think they won't be able to sense your demonic aura?" Before he could finish speaking, Xiang Nan slapped his forehead forcefully and thought to himself that he was so stupid. The Dream Butterfly laughed out loud and said, "I told you, don't call me demonic woman all day long. Have you forgotten that I'm human?" Xiang Nan felt extremely embarrassed. Meng Dai said, "Don't worry, good brother. I will definitely save you. If those stinking monks refuse to let you go, I will definitely bring the sacred sect to attack. Don't." Xiang Nan was instantly shocked and angrily said, "The High Monk of Feiyin Temple has done a lot of good deeds for the people of the western regions. If you dare attack Feiyin Temple, don't blame me for not seeing you for the rest of my life." Chapter 367 Those who come are unkind. All right, I won't fight." Meng Dai pouted unhappily, but then, her pair of big eyes rolled and she laughed strangely, "It's good that I don't save you. You've been imprisoned for 3 years. I'll come and see you every day. I'll cook delicious food for you every day and take good care of you. You'll be mine for at least 3 years. You won't be able to escape." Xiang Nan was angry and funny, but his heart was warm, but his mood was very complicated. Xiang Nan was truly moved by what this Dream Butterfly had done to Xiang Nan, but she was also a member of the Heavenly Devil religion, a witch who killed people without blinking an eye. Xiang Nanping hated people who looked down on their lives the most, but he could not hate this Dream Butterfly. Could it be that I have a double standard? Because she treats me well, that's why I don't hate her. Xiang Nan shook his head helplessly. He recalled his experiences with the old monk in his heart and couldn't help but be filled with emotions. After Xiang Nan finished eating, the Dream Butterfly took over the hurdles and left with a snort. Afterwards, Xiang Nan entered the 18th floor of the dungeon and continued to study the Heart Sutra with the old monk. The next day, the Dream Butterfly came again. This time, the dishes she brought were completely different from yesterday's dishes. There wasn't a single repetition. It seemed like she had spent a lot of effort. Xiang Nan said while eating, "Why is Feiyin Temple willing to let you in to see me every day? Their rules are very strict." Meng Dai put her hands on her cheeks as she watched Xiang Nan eat. She said, you didn't commit a felony, and I spent a lot of money to repair the temple for them. That's why they showed mercy outside the law. Yes. Xiang Nan lowered his head slightly and was somewhat uncomfortable when he saw Meng Dai's blazing gaze. Oh right, why can you change your age at will? Sometimes it's a little girl, sometimes it's 20 years old, sometimes it's 17 or 18 years old. Which one is your real age? You can't be an old lady of 70 or 80, right? At this point, Xiang Nan suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. The flower branches of Meng Dai's smile trembled. This is the cultivation method I cultivate. It can stay young forever, and can change age at will. You've seen my master, her old lady. How old is she? Xiang Nan suddenly said, no wonder your master is so powerful that even the third-generation elders of our Haran sect are afraid of her. However, she looks younger and more like your sister. Meng Dai laughed and said, however, you guessed one thing correctly. I am 89 years old this year and can be your great-grandmother. Pshaw, the chopsticks in Xiang Nan's hand fell to the ground, the corner of his mouth twitching. Meng Dai covered her mouth and laughed, tears streaming down her cheeks. Stinking wood, I lied to you. My talent is so good. How could I only cultivate to the 5th level of the heavenly yuan when I was 89 years old? I'm just 21 years old this year, only 4 years older than you. Xiang Nan was speechless. She thought to herself that this woman's words were always unreliable. She didn't know which one was true and which one was false, but her age should be true. Are you full? Meng Dai took the bowl and chopsticks, and also carefully wiped the rice at the corner of Xiang Nan's mouth. I'll go to the south of the western regions in a moment and find the best dishes for you, she said. Ah! Xiang Nan was shocked. Did you find this food from all over the western regions? I thought it was you who cooked it. Meng Dai rolled her eyes at Xiang Nan and jumped away. Xiang Nan was even more touched. In order to change her taste every day, this woman actually traveled thousands of miles in search of delicacies in the western regions. Xiang Nan stabilized his mind and went to the 18th floor. As soon as he arrived today, the old monk stared fixedly at Xiang Nan for a long time and sighed, "Benefactor, your heart is in chaos." Xiang Nan shook his head and thought to himself, impossible. How could I have fallen for that demonic woman? I have long lost faith in love. I'll pass on another heart sutra to you today. Remember it well and go back to cultivate. The old monk didn't tell Xiang Nan much and directly began to recite the Heart Sutra. Over the next 10 days, Dream Butterfly came every day. Once Xiang Nan was full, he went to the 18th floor of the dungeon to cultivate with the old monk. At the same time, Xiang Nan was incomparably shocked by the Heart Sutra. He had never seen such a long heart art. For nearly 18 days, he had studied a large portion of the Heart Sutra every day, but he hadn't learned it until today. The complexity of this Heart Sutra was even more frightening than the Sun God technique. On the 20th day, Dream Butterfly arrived much later than usual. She may not be coming today. I'll go down first. Xiang Nan directly entered the 18th floor of the dungeon. At the same time, the world above. The winds and clouds in the sky changed. Countless humans and demon warriors on the ground were so scared that they didn't dare to come out. In the air, a bright light howled over and directly hovered above the flying cloud temple. Haran sect, 3rd generation elders, Song Mingsheng has come to ask for an audience. There were more than 100 people standing on the clouds. The 3 people in front of them were all half-saint experts. Behind them were a large number of young disciples. Those disciples were all relying on the yuan qi of half-saint experts to stand out of thin air. The arrival of these 3 half-sage experts in the western regions was enough to shake half of the western region's martial world. Inside the Flying Cloud Temple, the entire place was in chaos. The expressions of the elders in the temple changed drastically. He heard an aged voice from the depths of the temple. The voice was hoarse and said, "Friend, please come into the temple to see me." Song Mingqing smiled and landed in the front courtyard of Feiyin Temple with a large group of people. At this moment, the 2 little monks had already rang an ancient bell in the temple. In an instant, all the monks in the temple ran to the front yard to gather. All the elders of Feiyin Temple had arrived, and behind them stood thousands of young monks of different seniority. Song Mingqing's appearance was dignified, and he had a standard Mandarin face. His sword-browed tiger's eyes and nose were wide, and his mouth was wide, and he looked righteous at a glance. Song Mingqing cupped his fists and said, "Please come and meet the abbot of your temple." Just as he finished speaking, an old voice suddenly appeared between the monk and Song Mingqing. "Isn't this the poor monk?" Song Mingqing was suddenly shocked. At an unknown time, an old monk was standing in front of him. The monk wore a simple kasaya with patches on it. The monk had a peaceful expression and a faint smile on his face. "Are you the abbot of Feiyin Temple?" Song Mingqing's heart skipped a beat as he hurriedly said, "I, the 3rd generation elder of the Haran sect, Song Mingqing, greets the abbot." "Yes, benefactor is being too courteous." The abbot clasped his hands together and bowed slightly. The youths behind Song Mingqing were all dumbfounded. The abbot did not seem to have any strong aura, but he gave off an unfathomable feeling, as vast as the starry sky. The abbot said to an elder of the Commandment Academy behind him, "Junior brother, go and release all those who have committed minor crimes in the dungeon." "Abbot." The elder's expression changed slightly. "Go." The abbot smiled faintly. The elder's face instantly turned ashen as he walked towards the dungeon, his heart filled with fear and unease. Why release people from dungeons who don't commit serious crimes? Obviously, the abbot knew that the Flying Cloud Temple's calamity was imminent today. He had a compassionate heart and didn't want to implicate those innocent outsiders. Chapter 368 Mischief has swift wings. The 18th floor of the dungeon. After listening to today's Heart Sutra, Xiang Nan put his hands together and knelt down to salute the old monk. The old monk nodded and said, "There is no need to come back after today. I have already taught you all the scriptures of the Heart Sutra." Hearing this, Xiang Nan felt sour in his heart. He kowtowed 3 more times to the old monk. These days, as the old monk cultivated, Xiang Nan's mood was calm and he was always bathed in a peaceful holy light. Suddenly hearing the old monk's words, Xiang Nan couldn't help but feel sad in his heart. The old monk smiled and said, "Good child, do you know the name of the Heart Sutra I imparted to you?" Xiang Nan's eyes turned slightly red as he said, "Disciple doesn't know." Xiang Nan was well aware of the principle that teaching meant being a teacher. Although he was not a Buddhist, the old monk taught him the Heart Sutra without any reservations. Xiang Nan had already treated the old monk as half a master in his heart. The old monk smiled and nodded, "What I taught you is a kind of Heart Sutra that I created myself. It is called the Great Freedom Sutra. Cultivating this scripture can make you feel at ease. Although you are in a sea of suffering, you can still cleanse your body and love yourself. This is the main purpose of my teaching you the Great Freedom Scripture. However, there is another benefit to this scripture. It is that no matter what kind of Buddhist profound arts you cultivate in the future, you will be able to achieve twice the results with half the effort. In fact, your cultivation might even be twice as powerful and effective as that of Buddhist disciples. Ah! Senior, you can see it. Xiang Nan felt extremely ashamed. Yes. The old monk smiled and said, I saw that you were so obsessed with the Buddhist Heart Sutra. The first day, I knew that you were here for the Buddhist mysterious technique. However, you have a kind heart and a chivalrous heart. I do not dare to impart this technique to you, but I am willing to impart the Heart Sutra I created to you. Good child, farewell today. We will never see each other again. I will abide by my duty and continue to atone for my sins here. Go. Xiang Nan's face was already full of tears. He kowtowed 3 times to the old monk, Senior, you have shown great kindness. Xiang Nan will never forget it. Facing such an old senior, Xiang Nan couldn't even conceal his name. At this time, the elders of the Commandment Academy had already brought many disciples to the dungeon and released all the prisoners on the first 3 floors. When they arrived at this room in Xiang Nan, the elders suddenly became furious. Where is the empty one? As soon as he finished speaking, Xiang Nan happened to come back and face to face with the headmaster of the commandment. The elder was furious. What courage! How dare you run rampant in my Flying Cloud Temple's dungeon? Capture him and take him away. Everyone else was released, except Xiang Nan, who was escorted to the ground while running around in the dungeon. Only after arriving on the ground did Xiang Nan know that something big had happened at Feiyin Temple. The elder escorted Xiang Nan to the side of many disciples and said to Xiang Nan in a low voice, "Don't leave. After today's matter is over, I still need to find you to be held accountable. If I run away, this poor monk will definitely execute you on the spot." Xiang Nan had just used the void stone, but his mind was still in a state of chaos. He did not talk to the old commandment dean. Instead, he sat down cross-legged and quietly circulated the last part of the Great Freedom Scripture. "Senior Song, the person you want is here." The 2 little monks escorted the disciples of the Profound Sky sect to Song Mingcheng. "Xiang Nan, have they been rude to you?" "Don't worry, with this elder here, I will definitely get an explanation for you." Hearing the word Xiang Nan raised his eyelids and looked at the other side. He happened to see that Song Mingcheng was talking to a man from the Profound Sky sect who was pretending to be him. The corners of Xiang Nan's mouth rose slightly and he shook his head in disdain. He had seen all the elders of the Haoran sect before. There was no such person as Song Mingcheng. It seemed that he was still a member of the Profound Sky sect. The black sect man cupped his fists and said, "Elder, this group of smelly monks are very arrogant. I have already revealed their identities. They actually dare to arrest me. You must make the decision for me." Ha 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 ha. Song Mingcheng looked up at the sky and laughed. "What a great temple. How dare you?" As he spoke, Song Mingcheng raised his right hand, causing the earth to shake. Suddenly, an incomparably huge vortex appeared in the sky, as if it had sucked the entire sky into the vortex. Following that, the vortex turned into a heaven-piercing giant sword. The gigantic sword was propped against the top of the heavens, and the tip of the sword hung down to about 100 meters in the air above the Flying Cloud Temple. With this huge sword, the entire mountain peak where the Flying Cloud Temple was located began to shake, and there were signs of collapse at any moment. "My Buddha is merciful." The abbot of Feiyin Temple smiled faintly. In an instant, 8 Buddha shadows appeared in the sky. The 8 Buddha shadows stood upright in the sky and circled around each other, all of them looking down on their entire lives from above. And those Buddha shadows all clasped their hands together, muttering something in their mouths. A series of frightening Buddhist voices echoed through the 9 heavens. The voice was not ear-piercing, but it was clearly audible. Such an astonishing scene was not only in the direction of the profound sky sect, even the young monks of Feiyin Temple were stunned. As the Buddha's voice echoed, the enormous sword that pierced through the heavens and the earth gradually dissipated, turning into specks of light that filled the sky. Good method. Song Mingqinglang laughed. I admire the abbot's strength, but isn't your flying cloud temple bullying the small like this? What did you say? Who bullied your Haran sect? Behind them, the elders of the temples were very angry after all, and they all spoke out in a reasonable manner. The abbot clasped his hands together with a smile on his face. With a wave of his hand, the 8 shadows that covered the sky disappeared and said to Song Mingqing, Benefactor Song, I'm afraid you didn't come to this temple to be reasonable. Please speak clearly. Song Mingqing smiled and said, Abbot indeed has a long-term view. Let me be clear. This time, I am here on behalf of the Haran sect to exchange cultivation techniques with your temple. Indeed. Xiang Nan nodded silently. Previously, he only thought that since the profound sky sect had obtained the Buddhist sect's profound arts in the ancient martial tomb, it would be impossible for them to return to the flying cloud temple. However, he had recently gotten along with the old monk every day and learned some knowledge about Buddhist profound arts. It turned out that Buddhist profound arts were different from other martial arts techniques. Other people's cultivation methods and martial skills could be learned with them, but the Buddhist profound arts could not be like this. Instead, they had to proceed in an orderly and gradual manner. For example, cultivating the prajna palm, known as the number 1 palm technique of Buddhism, required Wei Tuo's palm to be mastered until it reached great success. This was also true of all other Buddhist profound arts. The owner of the ancient martial tomb was not from the Buddhist sect, but he knew some Buddhist profound arts. However, those profound arts had no foundation. The reason why the profound sky sect came this time was to obtain more basic profound arts from the flying cloud temple. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to complete all of their ancient profound arts. When the abbot heard this, he said, This poor monk admires the chivalrous way of the Haran sect, but each sect has its own style of martial arts. Although the Haran sect's techniques are profound and admirable, the old monk is not envious. Benefactor Song, please return. Then Song Mingqing laughed loudly, You said please come back. We came all the way here, how could you end it with just a single sentence? Old monk, let me tell you the truth. I'm going to book the martial arts books that your flying cloud temple has collected. At this time, Meng Dai carried a small basket and walked along the crowd to Xiang Nan's side. She whispered, Good brother, this place is really lively. Chapter 369 Buddhist Stories. Xiang Nan lowered his voice and said, Don't talk nonsense here so that others won't see through your identity. I don't care about them. Meng Dai sat down cross-legged beside Xiang Nan and took out a delicate dish from the basket. Xiang Nan had already finished circulating the last part of the Heart Sutra and began to eat it impolitely. On the other side, the people impersonating the Haran sect were waiting in a tight formation, while the Flying Cloud Temple was facing a great enemy. Only Xiang Nan and Dream Butterfly ignored the situation on the spot and ate independently, which made them look very different. Quite a few youths looked at Xiang Nan and the other two with sidelong gazes. Xiang Nan was open-minded and didn't care what other people thought of him. Anyway, he had food, so why didn't he eat it? Then Song Mingqing also glanced at Xiang Nan, then he turned his attention to the abbot and said, Abbot, I think it's better for you to take out all your Buddhist profound arts. The abbot clasped his hands together and said, the Buddhist profound art was painstakingly created by the great virtuous monks of past dynasties. I do not dare to give it to outsiders. Ha! Song Mingqing laughed loudly. You guys imprison my Haran sect's disciple Xiang Nan for no reason. Are you imprisoning him for nothing? Don't rely on your numbers to bully us. My Haran sect isn't a dry-run sect. Do you believe that if I send a signal, your entire flying cloud temple will be surrounded by my Haran sect? The abbot put his hands together and did not speak, but he did not agree to Song Mingqing's conditions. Song Mingqing's expression changed. He didn't expect that this old monk wouldn't take it hard. He moved his eyes and said, "Do you know my Haran sect master? How strong are you compared to our sect master?" The abbot said, "In the early years, I was fortunate enough to have met your sect's Zhang Haran and sect master Zhang several times. I was also fortunate enough to exchange martial arts with sect leader Zhang. Sect leader Zhang is indeed a rare martial arts genius. This poor monk is ashamed of being inferior to him." Song Mingqing laughed. "That's right. When mentioning the heavenly Tao old man, who doesn't know in the entire Blue Tide continent? Then let me ask you again, since your martial arts strength can't compare to my sect master's. Then I will use our Haran sect's martial arts techniques to exchange for your Flying Cloud Temple's martial arts techniques. Aren't you guys taking advantage of us and we're at a disadvantage? Do you refuse to do so?" The abbot shook his head. "Although this poor monk is not a match for sect master Zhang, it is all because of his stupid aptitude. It is not that my Buddhist profound arts are not good." Song Mingqing gritted his teeth angrily and murmured, "Good, you bald donkey. You really are a toast without a penalty. Elder, Xiang Nan has something to say. Can Xiang Nan dare to say a few words to the abbot?" At this moment, in the direction of the heavenly profound sect, the man who was pretending to be Xiang Nan stood out. Song Mingqing's eyes were filled with admiration as he nodded and said, "All right, Xiang Nan, let your junior advise the abbot." Xiang Nan took 3 steps forward and said to the abbot, "This one is not talented. It is the Haoran sect's Xiang Nan. Although he has never cultivated in Buddhism, he still admires the virtues of an ancient virtuous monk. I once heard a story about an eagle wanting to eat a wild pigeon. It happened to be seen by a virtuous monk. In order to save the pigeon, that senior monk didn't hesitate to cut the meat and feed it to the eagle. How kind and selfless was this?" Upon hearing this story, the abbot let out a long sigh. Xiang Nan continued, "In order to save a wild pigeon, there is an eminent monk who is willing to cut off even the flesh on his body. But today, we don't want your flesh. As long as you have your Buddhist profound arts, are you unwilling to give it to me? Is this the virtue of the cultivators of your Flying Cloud Temple? Is this considered selfless? May I ask, abbot, do you feel that the Buddhist profound arts are too powerful to be willing to exchange with us? Is this agreed?" "All right." Song Mingqing's eyes lit up, and the disciples of the heavenly profound sect behind him all clapped their hands and applauded. Hearing this, the abbot put his hands together and sighed deeply. "This kid is so powerful." Dream Butterfly served Xiang Nan as she listened to their conversation. She whispered in Xiang Nan's ear, "The person who pretended to be you is very smart. He doesn't need to be strong or soft. Instead, he directly stimulates the old bald donkey with the classic stories of Buddhism. Not only is this person lacking in strength, he is also an extremely intelligent person. This kind of person is a threat to a good brother. Why don't we find an opportunity to kill him?" Xiang Nan glared at Dream Butterfly. "What's wrong, abbot? Do you have anything else to say?" The fake Xiang Nan smiled faintly and cupped his fists. Why don't you learn the virtuous monk today and exchange the Buddhist profound arts with us? It can be considered as adding a brilliance to your cultivation. The abbot did not say anything. The Feiyin temple elders and the young monks behind him were all furious, but they did not know how to refute it. I'm full. Xiang Nan wiped his mouth, stood up, stretched his waist, and walked forward. He walked to the center of the crowd on both sides, and everyone on both sides looked at him. Everyone was curious, where did this brat come from? What's he doing out there? Xiang Nan bowed respectfully to the abbot, then cupped his fists in the direction of the profound sky sect and said, I am not from the Feiyin temple, but I have something to say. I wonder if you are willing to listen. Song Mingchen was stunned. The man from the profound sky sect did not expect it, but what else could he do at this moment? They were originally trying to convince people by reason, so they couldn't help but let Xiang Nan speak. All right then. Xiang Nan smiled and said to the fake Xiang Nan, I've heard that story before, but I don't think it's appropriate for you to use it here. Great virtue monk fed the eagle meat to save his life, because the eagle was only hungry and did not hate it. If he fed the eagle meat, it would not hurt other small animals for a short period of time. This kind of behavior was considered selfless. As for the evil intentions of humans, their desires are endless. If I exchange the Buddhist profound arts with you today, I won't let you let go of the butcher's knife. I can only let you do evil better. I don't feel that doing this is selfless. Doing this is helping the evil. Well said. The dozen or so elders of the Commandment Academy all laughed happily. Especially the elder who personally escorted Xiang Nan here, he clapped his hands happily. Xiang Nan smiled and said to the fake Xiang Nan, the abbot has an eminent monk. I'm sure he understands this better than I do, but how could he argue with a junior like you? But I am also a young man, so I can't look over. Come out and say more. Meng Dai covered her mouth and giggled. She gave Xiang Nan a thumbs up, her eyes shining with stars. That day, the black sex man was ruined by Xiang Nan. His eyes were red with anger. He pointed at Xiang Nan and said angrily, Who are you? Our Haran sect and Feiyin temple are talking, so it's your turn to speak. Xiang Nan shrugged his shoulders and retorted, Then what are you? The respected elders of both the Haran sect and the Feiyin temple are here. Is it your turn to shout and fart here? You. The Xuanzong sect's manly words were indescribable. What did I say wrong? If I said wrong, you can refute it. Xiang Nan hugged his shoulders. Chapter 370. A contest between the two sides. That day, the Xuanzong man was enraged by Xiang Nan. However, his eyes rolled and he said, You said that we are evil, and that we learned the Buddhist profound arts to help the evil? Why do you say that? Who doesn't know that our Haran sect is a righteous sect, and that it is a righteous sect that practices chivalry and righteousness? If we don't hate it, then exchanging Buddhist profound arts with us wouldn't be considered helping the evil. Xiang Nan put up an arbor and looked in the direction of the profound sky sect. Everyone was confused by Xiang Nan's actions, and many young monks hurriedly looked towards the profound sky sect, following Xiang Nan's example and placing their hands in front of their foreheads. The direction of the heavenly profound sect felt even more strange. The heavenly profound sect man didn't know what Xiang Nan was looking at, but he was also looking behind him. Ayaya, so many people. Xiang Nan slapped his thigh and said, So many Haran sect disciples and 3 half-saint elders have arrived. You are blocking the door of Feiyin temple and insisting on exchanging martial skills with them. I don't see how this can be regarded as righteousness and decency. Didn't your own actions already refute your own words? You really hit yourself in the face. Many young monks in Feiyin Temple couldn't help but laugh, feeling extremely happy in their hearts. On the other hand, the Xuanzong man was so angry that he almost spat out a mouthful of old blood. What a sharp-tongued kid! Song Mingqing stood up and pointed at Xiang Nan. Today, I will kill you. That power contained the power of a half-sage realm, and it could be said to destroy heaven and earth. Xiang Nan wasn't worried about his life at all. Sure enough, the abbot waved his right hand and the worn-out robe flew out, blocking Xiang Nan's path. White light shone on the robe. Song Mingqing's terrifying finger force struck the kasaya, causing the kasaya to flutter, but it did not penetrate it. Good. Song Mingqing was furious and said, "My Haran sect kindly came to ask for an audience, but your Feiyin Temple sent a nameless brat to slander our Haran sect's reputation. Let me tell you the truth. You have already provoked the profound sky sect. Today, you will either exchange Buddhist profound arts with us or wait for our army to attack. Choose for yourselves. Fight. I'm afraid of you." The young monks all cried out. The young disciples of the profound sky sect also cursed at the flying cloud temple with cold eyes and crossed eyebrows. "My Buddha is merciful." The abbot clasped his hands together. This sentence was like thunder, exploding in everyone's minds. The scene immediately quieted down. The abbot said, "Haran is in the east and Feiyin is in the west. They are both forces that uphold justice in the blue tide continent. We must not harm the peace." The fake Xiang Nan said, all right. Since we are talking about martial arts, then we will only talk about martial arts, not about good and evil. It's not up to you or us to decide who is righteous and who is evil, but it's up to everyone to decide who is more suitable to cultivate the Buddhist profound arts. This way. The fake Xiang Nan said, "Let's each send out young disciples to cultivate Buddhist profound arts together. Whoever learns better will win, okay? If you win, we will leave immediately. If we win, you will trade with us. This method is good." Song Mingqing clapped his hands and said, "It's settled." "Abbot, what do you think?" The abbot nodded and said, "It can be considered a solution." Right now, there was no other choice. Either they would tear themselves apart and start a battle, or they would compete. However, it was better to compete than to start a war. As he spoke, the abbot took a few steps back, leaving an open space for the midfielder and said, "Flying Dragon Institute." Yes. An old monk with scum and white hair put his hands together and walked to the middle of the field. He said, "The hostess of the poor monks' Soaring Dragon Institute, Tingjing." The Soaring Dragon Sea was filled with rage. The Soaring Dragon Institute's presiding officer was actually an eminent monk of the Soaring Dragon realm. He was of the same generation as the abbot. The abbot was different from the abbot. The abbot was the highest leader of the entire Flying Dragon Institute, and this abbot was only in charge of the Flying Dragon Institute. The Flying Dragon Institute was a school specializing in martial arts in Feiyin Temple. Almost all of the experts of Feiyin Temple came from this school. After learning from this school, they were assigned to other schools. Tingjing looked in the direction of the heavenly profound sect and said, "How can we compete? Please give us a way, my friends from the Haran sect. How about this?" Song Mingqing said, "Both of us will send out a junior, and you will teach our junior a Buddhist profound art. Whoever is stronger in the battle between the two juniors will win. Isn't that unfair?" Tingjing Chi said, "Our junior has a good foundation in learning Buddhist profound arts all year round. This old bald donkey is so stupid." Meng Dai curled her lips and said, since when did you speak up for someone else? Song Mingqing laughed loudly and said, your juniors have already learned it for many years, and we can defeat you just by learning it. Does this mean that we are more qualified to learn Buddhist profound arts? But, you have indeed taken advantage of me, so I must designate the Buddhist profound arts that both sides use to fight. That's good too. Tingjing did not suspect him and agreed on the spot. These people have ill intentions. Xiang Nan muttered in a low voice, they must have learned Buddhist profound arts and come prepared. All right. Song Mingqing said, I heard that there is a finger technique called IMMORTAL finger in the Flying Dragon Institute. I admire it very much. Let's use this finger technique as a combat martial skill. Don't worry, we won't win or lose in one match. Instead, we will fight until no one from your Flying Cloud Temple responds. All right. Tingjing nodded and said, Yundu, step out. Disciple is here. Yundu put down his staff and walked to Tingjing's side with his hands clasped together. Tingjing said, Mo pointed, how long have you been learning? Yundu said, this junior is not talented. His flower-picking finger has not yet reached completion, and Mo finger has only studied for 2 years. He has only just begun to peek at the path of the door. All right. Song Mingqing ordered Xiang Nan to fight. Then Song Mingqing said, my sex Xiang Nan is a martial arts genius. Let him learn your sex precious treasure, Mo pointed. Tingjing looked at Xiang Nan and said, Xiang Nan, watch carefully. As he spoke, Tingjing waved his right hand, and from the distance of the Flying Cloud Temple, an ancient bell that was 10 meters tall suddenly flew over. Tingjing glanced at the realm of Xiang Nan and said, you and Yundu are both at the 5th level of origin return. That poor monk will also suppress your realm to the 5th level of origin return. Take a good look. As he spoke, Tingjing waved his sleeve and pointed at the giant bell with his index finger. Mo pointed technique has 3 fingers. 3 of them will go to hell in a day. Tingjing pointed at the giant bell with his right index finger. The first finger was the index finger, but seeing Tingjing's finger point out, the yuan qi at the tip of his finger condensed and a fire mark shot out. The fire mark struck the giant bell, causing it to rumble and leave behind a faint burn mark. What a hard clock! Meng Dai whispered, the hardness of this bell should already have the hardness of an authentic Earth-grade weapon. Xiang Nan nodded thoughtfully. In the joint examination, the hardness of the arena was only comparable to a low-frequency weapon, and this ancient bell itself was of the Earth grade, even harder than the arena. But why did this finger technique look so familiar? Chapter 371 Win 1 by 1. After that, Tingjing used her second finger. This time, she pointed with her right hand and saw that Tingjing pointed out a flame finger. The flaming finger force struck the ancient bell, leaving behind another burn mark, which was even deeper than the burn mark on the index finger. Xiang Nan's eyes twitched as he thought to himself, could it be? This is the third finger. For the last time, Tingjing used his right thumb to shoot towards the ancient bell, and immediately shot out a beam of flames. And that flame beam was continuous. Once the ancient bell was struck, the finger force continued to shoot at the surface of the ancient bell, causing the burning to grow deeper and deeper. Tingjing abruptly withdrew his finger power, and the persistent flame beam stopped. This is the last finger, Tingjing said. Xiang Nan, come, I will teach you the first level of Mo pointed S incantation. If you practice this first level well, you can also release 3 fingers. Although the power cannot reach its maximum, it is already enough. Yes. That day, the Xuanzong man walked forward and heard Tingjing whispering in his ear. When he saw this, Xiang Nan had already awakened from his dreams. Damn it, Yi Dong used the blazing eye to look down on him in the 12 consecutive examinations. So it was the Buddhist profound art, ENG pointed. However, ENG pointed should be a more powerful finger technique. That Yi Dong was unable to release it with his finger, so he got a big eye. And that big eye definitely had nothing to do with Buddhist profound arts, but it seemed to be able to make up for Yi Dong's lack of cultivation and release ENG in another form. In other words, Yi Dong actually used two martial skills. One is the big eye. The big eye has a wondrous effect, can release ENG finger with the eye. So it's like this, Xiang Nan suddenly realized. Junior, remember. At this time, the man from the heavenly profound sect sat cross-legged after hearing Tingjing's incantation and began to cultivate in a fake manner. Xiang Nan couldn't help but sneer. This fake Xiang Nan was about the same level as Yi Dong, but his overall strength was indeed better than Yi Dong's. Yi Dong knew the incantation of ENG pointed, and the fake Xiang Nan should know it as well. He had even practiced it a long time ago. The people of Feiyin Temple were all very kind and did not set a time point for Xiang Nan, which meant that he could cultivate as long as he wanted. Unexpectedly, the pure Yundu was still explaining beside Xiang Nan and said, "You guys are not very smart in choosing the ENG finger. To learn the ENG finger, you first need to learn the basic finger technique, the Vajra finger, then the flower finger, and then the ENG finger. You can learn it by directly learning ENG pointed, but its power is not enough to pierce through a piece of wood." Sigh, this foolish kid. Xiang Nan sighed helplessly. The heavenly profound sect had come here to exchange for the incomplete Buddhist profound arts they had mastered. How are you? Just tell them how to learn and what they lack. Good brother, do you think he can learn? Dream Butterfly whispered in Xiang Nan's ear. Xiang Nan sneered, definitely. Since they have chosen the ENG finger, they must have mastered the martial skills of the great strength Vajra finger and the flower picking finger. Half an hour later, the fake Xiang Nan stood up and said, "This junior has already learned it." Hearing this, the entire Feiyin Temple was shocked. Even Tingjing was dumbfounded and said, "How is that possible? Come and see." The heavenly profound sect man pointed his index finger at Gu Zhong from afar. Immediately, a fire mark shot out, hitting Gu Zhong and leaving behind a shallow mark. Compared to Tingjing using the 5th level of the origin returning realm, the ENG finger he released was far, far inferior to half of Tingjing's. That was because he had only learned the 1st level of the incantation. The heavenly profound sect man pointed out his middle finger and a flame shot out, hitting the ancient bell, leaving behind another burn mark. The Xuanzong man smiled slightly, "It's just a mere talent. I haven't learned this 3rd finger yet." Yundu's eyes widened in shock as he said, "It's already amazing. I've only learned the 2nd finger after 2 years." The direction of the Flying Cloud Temple was already panicked. They had absolute confidence in the Buddhist profound arts in their hearts, but today, a foreign Haran sect disciple had only learned the 2nd finger of ENG pointed in half an hour. Doesn't that mean that the Buddhist profound art isn't really that great? It's just that it has a false reputation. This attack on Feiyin Temple was undoubtedly devastating. "Senior brother Yundu, I have offended you." The black sect man took a few steps back and pointed at Yundu with his index finger. Yundu hurriedly took a few steps back and pointed his finger. The two's finger power transformed into fire marks and collided in the air. A muffled sound came from Peng's voice, causing the flames to roil. The Xuanzong man jumped into the air and shot out with both hands. He pointed out 2 times in a row and 2 flame fingers shot out. Yundu was shocked and thought to himself, junior brother Nan's talent is so strong. He had just learned to use MO-ku pointed so skillfully. Yundu didn't dare to underestimate his opponent. He also pointed out the flame finger power of his middle finger. Afterwards, the 2 of them continuously dodged and fought with each other's MO-ku fingers. On the battlefield, the flame fingers were crisscrossed, shooting everywhere with astonishing might. This Yundu had only just touched the path of MO-ku pointed, so he must have just learned the first level. The 2 of them exchanged blows more than a dozen times. In the end, the Sky Profound Sect man's body flickered, dodging 3 streaks of Yundu's power in succession, and pointed his finger at the space between Yundu's eyebrows. Chi! A flaming finger force pressed down on Yundu's forehead. Tingjing waved his right hand and dispersed the Sky Profound Sect man's finger power, saying, Yundu has already lost. Yundu's heart was filled with sorrow as he bowed to the man from the Profound Sky Sect. Junior brother Xiang Nan is exceptionally talented. This little monk is ashamed of being inferior to him. With that, Yundu retreated back to the crowd. Is there anything else? The man from the Profound Sky Sect smiled and shouted in the direction of the Flying Cloud Temple, if anyone feels that their MO-ku finger is stronger than mine, please stand up and fight me. Poor monk Yungue, wish. A small monk walked out. Retreat. Tingjing directly scolded Yungue and said, you already have the 8th level of origin return. How can you fight martial nephew Xiang Nan? This poor monk, Yun Xiao. Another little monk stepped forward and said, both of you are at the 5th level of the origin return stage. You are willing to experience junior brother Xiang Nan's MO-ku pointed. As he spoke, Yun Xiao soared into the air and pointed 3 fingers at the man from the Profound Sky Sect. The Heavenly Profound Sect's man was not afraid. He also pointed with 3 fingers. The 6 flame fingers collided perfectly in the air, exploding into flames that filled the sky. The Heavenly Profound Sect man then shot a finger towards Yun Xiao's right shoulder. Yun Xiao quickly used his finger power to resist, blocking this finger. The Heavenly Profound Sect man shot 2 more fingers, one towards Yun Xiao's left shoulder and one towards Yun Xiao's crotch. Yun Xiao immediately lost his rhythm. After blocking the 2 fingers, his left leg was pierced through by the next finger of the Heavenly Profound Sect's man. Qingjian. The man from the Profound Sky Sect clasped his fists and smiled. Yun Xiao sighed, covered his wounds and limped back. Chapter 372 Peerless Genius. In the direction of the Flying Cloud Temple, no one actually came to fight. In the same realm, Yun Du and Yun Xiao were both outstanding. Both of them lost, and the other monks would probably end up the same way. So, I won. That day, the Xuanzong man became happy. I don't think so. Xiang Nan said, Feiyin Temple is not a disciple without better talent. It's just that those disciples are at a higher realm. Then what do you think we should do? The moment the Heavenly Profound Sect man saw Xiang Nan, his heart was filled with anger. How about this? I saw that senior brother Yun Gui's talent was very good just now. How about you compare with him? Xiang Nan said. But the Cloud Return Realm, Tingjing said. Xiang Nan shook his head and said, it doesn't matter. Senior brother Yun Gui's cultivation level is relatively high. He may have already learned the 3rd finger. Then find another Buddhist profound art that Yun Gui doesn't know. Let him learn it with Xiang Nan. Ah, right. Tingjing kept nodding, and the more she thought about it, the more reasonable she felt. On the other hand, the black sect man glared at Xiang Nan sinisterly. Xiang Nan's suggestion immediately broke the heavenly profound sect's trick. That day, the man from the profound sect must have learned MO pointed for a long time. If it was another kind of Buddhist profound art, he might not have learned it. Tingjing thought for a moment, then said, Yun Gui specializes in MO pointed. With Baoyuo Mi Shou, let Yun Du and Xiang Nan learn Wei Tuo Palm together. No. Xiang Nan hurriedly stopped. There were many types of Buddhist profound arts, and it was impossible for any disciple to learn all of them. For example, Yun Du specialized in Duoluo Yeji and Wei Tuo Palm, while Yun Gui specialized in Mo pointed and Baoyuo Mi Shou. But although Wei Tuo Zhang Yun Gui couldn't do it, the man from the profound sky sect would definitely do it. Yi Dong had used this move many times. Why? Tingjing didn't know why and asked Xiang Nan. The man from the profound sky sect was so angry that he wished he could dig out Xiang Nan's bones and eat them. Xiang Nan only said it impulsively. He couldn't find a reason now, so he could only make it up forcefully and said, then, we've seen Wei Tuo Palm many times. Why don't we find a palm technique that we haven't seen before? Let us broaden our horizons as well. So it's like this. Tingjing nodded and said, then come and learn the 1000 Buddha palm. This kind of palm technique is still above Wei Tuo's palm, and it is fairly difficult for Xiang Nan to even treat Yun Gui. As he spoke, Tingjing gently slapped the distant ancient bell. With this palm strike, 7 or 8 arm shadows appeared on the side of his right arm. Those arms clapped at Gu Zhong like clapping hands. Tingjing slapped the ancient bell with one palm, and 7 or 8 palms struck the ancient bell. Every time, he took a shallow palm print. Immediately after, Tingjing took out both his hands and slapped them towards Gu Zhong. However, more and more arm shadows appeared on the sides of his arms. More and more arm shadows appeared on the sides of his arms. For a moment, it was as if there were thousands of palms striking the ancient bell together. In an instant, the sound of the ancient clock clanging could be heard endlessly. Countless dense palm prints were ruthlessly imprinted on the ancient clock and watch layer. What an astonishing palm technique! Xiang Nan sucked in a breath of cold air. Tingjing's palm strike was definitely not fast. However, once he was proficient in using the 1000 Buddha palm, he would be like a 1000-hand Buddha. A single palm could drive 7 or 8 palms, a dozen palms, and then nearly 100 palms. The Xuanzong man was overjoyed. Although he did not understand the 1000 Buddha palm, he was able to learn it now. It was really a good thing that Pi fell from the sky. The two of you, come here. Tingjing summoned the heavenly profound sect man and Yun Gui, and taught them heart force incantations. Alright, this is the first level of the 1000 Buddha palm art. You two can practice it together. Only one of you shouts to stop. Let's start the fight. Let's see who can practice it well. Yes. The two of them sat down cross-legged at the same time and began to study hard. Good brother, how long do you think they will learn? If they learn for 3 days and 3 nights, wouldn't it be boring to death? Dream Butterfly grabbed Xiang Nan's arm and shook it discontentedly. Xiang Nan said, no, that fake Xiang Nan will definitely start soon. Why? Dream Butterfly asked curiously. Xiang Nan said, Yun Gui has a deep foundation in Buddhist profound arts, but that Xiang Nan doesn't. The two of them studied the 1000 Buddha palm at the same time that they had never learned before. The first thing they fought for was talent and comprehension. Once both of them have comprehended the 1000 Buddha palm, then Yun Gui will definitely be the first to rely on his solid foundation, far surpassing Xiang Nan. That's right. Meng Dai clapped her hands and said, why didn't I think of it? Sure enough, an hour later, the Xuanzong man immediately stood up and said, let's begin. So fast. The little monks of Feiyin Temple all widened their eyes in shock. Yun Gui also stood up, his face still remembering the incantation of the 1,000 Buddha palm. Tingjing placed her hand on Yun Gui's shoulder and injected a strand of Yuan Qi. I have suppressed your cultivation to the 5th level of the origin realm, she said. Sorry, senior brother Yun Gui. The Xuanzong man clasped his fists and then struck Yun Gui with his palm. His 1,000 Buddha palm was sent out, and only a very faint arm was condensed beside his arm. Not only was the number much smaller than Tingjing's, but the shadow of his arm was not obvious enough. That Yun Gui also slapped his palm, but the situation was not as good as that of the Sky Profound Sect's man. Yun Gui's arm was actually more than half, or even incomplete. The two of them swiftly moved forward to fight. As more and more palms were slapped out, the number of arm shadows condensed on both sides of their arms continued to increase. By the time both sides struck 20 palms, there were already 20 arm shadows condensed by the man from the Profound Sky Sect, while there were only 14 arm shadows from Yun Gui. The man from the Profound Sky Sect was extremely excited. He found an opportunity and sent Yun Gui flying with a palm strike. After rolling on the ground for more than 10 times, Yun Gui staggered to his feet. He clasped his hands together and spat out a large mouthful of blood. There were already 17 or 18 palm prints on his chest. Little monk, he is, ashamed of his inferiority. Yun Gui let out a long sigh and returned to the crowd. Xiang Nan nodded silently and said, although this kid from the Profound Sky Sect is a fake, his talent and perception are genuine. He is indeed a genius. If the two of them continue to cultivate, Yun Gui would definitely become stronger and stronger. As for the man from the Profound Sky Sect, he was very smart and clearly avoided the disadvantage that he did not have a foundation in Buddhist profound arts. Now that things had come to this point, there was nothing else to say in the direction of the Flying Cloud Temple. How is it? The man from the Black Sect took out his folding fan and proudly said, who else are you sending to fight me? Tingjing sighed and clasped his hands together. Martial nephew Xiang Nan is worthy of being the champion of the 12 sects joint examination. He is indeed a peerless genius. His reputation is well deserved. No one of my Feiyin Temple's peers is any better than him. There must be some geniuses in the Feiyin Temple, but those who refused to act shamelessly were all sent out to fight against the men of the Black Sect. The senior monks of the Feiyin Temple would definitely not do such a thing. Since that's the case, the Black Sect man was overjoyed. Just as he was about to speak, a burst of laughter came from the mountain gate. Brother Xiang Beixiang, you can stay here. Hearing this, Xiang Nan was shocked. Brother Chen. Chapter 373 True and False Xiang Nan. Everyone at the scene turned to look. However, Chen Hengjuan walked in step by step with a 5-meter-tall bronze cauldron in one hand. Chen Heng walked over step by step. Every time he landed on the bluestone road, he would step on a footprint that was about 3 inches deep. Pressure. It's the demon race. The monks of Feiyin Temple were instantly enraged and took out their weapons one by one. That enormous bronze cauldron was definitely not that heavy, allowing Chen Hengjuan to step on it 1 foot at a time. This was because the Flying Cloud Temple was the sacred land of Buddhism. Just this temple itself had a powerful suppressive power against the demons. This suppressive power was called pressure. In other words, as long as someone entered the Flying Cloud Temple and triggered the pressure, they would definitely be demons. Moreover, The higher a demon's realm was, the stronger the pressure it would trigger. Chen Heng carried the pressure and walked all the way to the middle of the two sides. The pressure had already suppressed the veins on his forehead, but he still laughed loudly. "Is my brother Xiang here?" "Brother Chen, how are you?" Xiang Nan hurriedly rushed out. The monks from the Feiyin temple were already prepared to go up and kill Chen Hengjuan on the spot. As for Xiang Nan, he kept whining at Chen Hengjuan and whispered, "Hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. Aren't you courting death by coming here?" Chen Hengjuan laughed loudly and said to the group of monks of Feiyin temple, "Monks of Feiyin temple, it's easy for you to kill me. However, can you wait for me and brother Xiang to drink wine before killing me?" Xiang Nan said anxiously, "Brother Chen, you're so foolish." Chen Hengjuan waved his hand and smiled. "Ah, you can't say that. Since I have a three-sided agreement with brother Xiang, then I must fulfill it. I have brought the black snake mouth wine with me to the appointment." Clang! Chen Heng landed the bronze cauldron on the ground. It was indeed filled with strong liquor. Chen Hengjuan cupped his fists towards the sky and said, "I was brought up by a storyteller. Since I was young, I have been traveling around with him to earn money from storytellers. At that time, I was just a lion cub. I would lie beside Mr. and listen to him every day. Although I am not a human, I am touched by the stories of heroes and heroes of the human race. I yearn for the chivalrous tenderness of those great heroes. I admire their chivalry and courage. I know that there is a saying among human heroes that every word is irrevocable. Since I have a three-sided agreement with brother Xiang, even if I come here to die, I cannot break it. Brother Xiang, drink." Chen Heng took out 2 porcelain bowls from his bosom and handed one to Xiang Nan. He took the lead in taking out a mouthful of wine in the copper cauldron and drank it. He shouted, "Fresh." Xiang Nan stared blankly at Chen Hengjuan, who had also been infected by Chen Hengjuan. He laughed loudly, "Good. What a man who can't be chased after every word he says. Brother Chen, although you are not a human, I respect you as a man who will do what you say." Amit Ba, the abbot of the Flying Cloud Temple, put his hands together and said, "A monster who knows that his oath will not be ruined has made us humiliated." Everyone present felt extremely ashamed. With the world going down, how many people would abide by the agreement now? How many people would be so stupid as to be willing to sacrifice their lives to defend a verbal agreement? Humans. Everyone present was human. With so many humans, they were actually not as valued as a single demon. Xiang Nan's heroic spirit soared to the sky. He raised his wine bowl with both hands. "Brother Chen, I'll toast you with 3 bowls. This is the first bowl. To you, you don't mind my status as an outsider. You are willing to treat me as your best friend and take care of me everywhere." The 2 of them drank together. Xiang Nan raised another bowl and said, "This second bowl is for you to say what you want to do. For the sake of our three-sided covenant, you are going to die alone." The 2 of them exchanged another bowl. Xiang Nan raised the 3rd bowl of wine and said, "This 3rd bowl, I toast you as an honest and upright man. Your character, I admire you." "Ha ha ha, good wine, good words." Chen Hengjuan drank all of the wine happily. He drank all 3 bowls of wine and then smashed the bowl to the ground. Afterwards, Chen Hengjuan said to the monks of the Feiyin temple, "I drank my wine. If you want to kill me or cut me into pieces, you can come." Xiang Nan pressed down on Chen Hengjuan's arm and said, "You treat me like a brother, and I treat you the same way. Today, even if I risk my life, I will not let brother Chen die here." As he spoke, Xiang Nan cupped his fists and said to Chen Hengjuan, please forgive me for deceiving me. I am from the Hautian Empire, the Haran sect, Xiang Nan. Since you've treated me sincerely, I won't hide anything anymore. Xiang Nan. Hearing this, everyone present was shocked. Chen Hengjuan pointed at the man from the Profound Sky sect, then pointed at Xiang Nan and said, "Your name is also Xiang Nan." The direction of the Flying Cloud Temple was even more puzzled, and his gaze constantly shifted between the Sky Profound sect's man and Xiang Nan. On the other hand, the Sky Profound sect was in a bit of a mess. Did they know that they were fakes? On the other hand, the man from the Black sect pointed at Xiang Nan and laughed loudly. "This is pure nonsense. Don't tell me you want to impersonate my name and come to Feiyin Temple to cheat me." Xiang Nan strode in front of the abbot of Feiyin Temple and knelt on one knee with his hands clasped together, saying, "Junior Xiang Nan greets martial uncle." Xiang Nan was now a direct disciple of the Heavenly Tao Old Man, and the abbots of the Heavenly Tao Old Man and the Tingzi generation were of the same generation. Naturally, they were Xiang Nan's martial uncles. "Martial uncle, please atone for your sins." Xiang Nan has an extremely difficult reason. He has not been able to clarify his identity. However, someone is impersonating our Nature's sect today. This junior will definitely stand up and rightly name our Nature's sect. The abbot asked curiously, "Good child, get up quickly. You said you are Xiang Nan, and they said that the child over there is also Xiang Nan. How can you prove your authenticity?" Xiang Nan turned around and smiled at the man from the Black sect. Xiang Nan entered the Nature sect and first joined Sun Peak Su Kaiyu. This should be true, right? The abbot nodded slightly. I've heard of it. Since Xiang Nan's master is Su Kaiyu, Xiang Nan looked at the Xuanzong man and said, "Use the sun god technique to open our eyes." "Shut up." Song Mingqing took a step forward and shouted, "How dare you pretend to be a disciple of our Haran sect in front of me? Today, I, Song Ming, have accomplished the task of cleaning up the scum of the Haran sect." As he spoke, Song Mingqing roared over, wanting to kill Xiang Nan on the spot. "No!" Tingjing flew out and raised his hands high. 6 heaven-defying Buddhas suddenly appeared in the sky. The 6 Buddhas stretched out their right hands and were about to press down. Thus, Song Mingqing had no choice but to retreat and angrily said, "Fortunately, you old bald donkeys actually dare to stop our Haran sect from cleaning up the scum." Tingjing clasped her hands together and said, "Junior brother Mingqing, it's better not to make a move until we know what happened. Come on." Xiang Nan pointed at the Heavenly Profound sect disciples and said, "Come and take a look with a sun god technique." The Xuanzong man blushed and said, This is, the sun god technique is a peerless technique. Although I learned it from Master Kaiyu, I have never been able to learn it." "Ha, you won't, but I will." Xiang Nan stepped forward, and an incomparably fierce beam of sunlight suddenly descended from the sky. The daylight shrouded Xiang Nan's entire body, releasing a dazzling light. Chapter 374 Over Shoes Over Boots. "It really is you." The abbot of the Feiyin Temple smiled and nodded. "It seems that you are the real Xiang Nan." After using the sun god technique, Xiang Nan respectfully presented his waist token to the abbot and said, "This junior has obtained the permission of my sect's elders to come to Feiyin Temple. I just didn't expect that someone would pretend to be an elder and disciple of our Haran sect to tarnish our sect's reputation. For many years, although our Haran sect and Feiyin Temple haven't had much interaction, they still respect each other. I hope Martial Uncle doesn't underestimate our Haran sect just because someone is impersonating us." The abbot smiled happily and said, No, your master Zhang Haran's character is upright, and the poor monk also admires him very much. Since you are Xiang Nan, then who are they? Xiang Nan turned around and sneered, these people are all from the Nine Firmaments continent and of the Profound Sky sect. Ah! The entire Feiyin temple was in chaos. Originally, he thought that someone was impersonating the Haoran sect. After Xiang Nan exposed it, he would just chase away all those imposters. He didn't expect that the person impersonating the Haoran sect would be the heavenly profound sect that was even more powerful than the Haoran sect. So what? Are we the Haoran sect? So what? Today, we are here to exchange for Buddhist profound arts. We are not here to be more righteous than anyone else's sect. The man from the black sect laughed loudly, so what? So what if we are from the Haoran sect? Great monk. The heavenly profound sect man pointed at the abbot of Feiyin temple and said, you and I already made an agreement earlier, and we even competed a few times. Could it be that you want to break the agreement? That monster just now even knew to follow the agreement, but you, an eminent monk of the Tao, didn't. The abbot clasped his hands together and said, I, Buddha, am merciful. Whether it is the nature sect or the heavenly profound sect, poor monks will naturally treat you equally and will not underestimate you. That's good. The Xuanzong man cupped his fists and said, Xuanzong, Yuziheo. Since you are still willing to abide by the agreement, then let's continue. If no one can defeat me, you can abide by the agreement and exchange cultivation techniques with us. Xiang Nan laughed loudly and said, Abbot Martial Uncle, Xiang Nan is willing to do his part for Feiyin temple. If Xiang Nan helps your temple survive this calamity, I hope Martial Uncle will lend me a hand and let my brother Chen go. Ah, my good brother, are you stupid? Dream Butterfly hurriedly rushed out and said, if you can save Feiyin temple, what kind of kindness is that? If you want cultivation methods from this group of monks and medicinal pills, they will give them to you. How can I let go of such a good opportunity for a demon? Xiang Nan shook his head and said, my brother Chen is reckless. He broke into the Buddhist Pure Land alone. This junior only begged Martial Uncle to spare his life. The abbot revealed a complimentary expression and kept nodding, good, good, good child. As expected of senior brother Haoran's direct disciple, he is truly loyal and loyal. Then Martial Uncle will obey you. Regardless of whether you win or lose, this poor monk will spare that lion demon's life. Thank you, Martial Uncle. Xiang Nan was happy. No wonder. Yundu nodded repeatedly not far away. I was curious in the forest. I had long heard that junior brother Xiang Nan was an open and honest person. Even if he wanted to kill a flower-shaped demonic beast, how could he use such a despicable method as poisoning it? So, that person is impersonating. At this time, Yuziheo stood up and frowned, you are a member of the Nature's Nature sect. Why do you represent the Feiyin temple to compete with me? Xiang Nan asked, you are a member of the Profound Sky sect, why did you come to the Feiyin temple under the guise of the Haoran sect? You. Yuziheo's face turned red with anger. Xiang Nan said, I, what am I? Then Yuziheo stomped his foot and shouted, all right. If you want to compete with me, then compete. I want to experience what's so outstanding about you, kid. Tingjing said, all right then, this poor monk will use another type of Buddhist profound art and let martial nephew Xiang Nan and martial nephew Ziheo learn it together. Senior, please wait a moment. Xiang Nan waved his hand and said, the Profound Sky sect has already obtained a lot of Buddhist profound arts from the ancient martial tomb. As far as I know, Wei Tua Palm, Flower Picking Finger, and Mo Ko Finger are all capable of doing so. This kind of thing would happen. Tingjing was stunned for a moment and said, "No wonder junior martial nephew Zihao learned Mo pointed so quickly. I just don't understand." Xiang Nan frowned. Since they already have Buddhist profound arts, why would they come to Feiyin Temple? If we say that the Buddhist profound arts are progressive, we must first learn elementary techniques before we can learn more advanced ones. Then they can secretly capture some disciples of Feiyin Temple and forcefully ask about elementary techniques. There's no need to bother to come here and clamor. I see. Tingjing suddenly came to a realization and said, "Xiang Nan, come and see." As he spoke, Tingjing slapped the ancient bell and saw an invisible palm strike the ancient bell, leaving behind a palm print on it and asking, "What is this?" Xiang Nan said, "Way to a palm." Tingjing nodded and slapped the ancient bell. Suddenly, a bald and barefooted arhat appeared in the sky. The arhat descended from the sky and struck the ancient bell with his palm, blasting the ancient bell into powder. What is this?" Tingjing asked again. Xiang Nan shook his head, "This junior doesn't know." Tingjing smiled and said, "This is also way to a palm." Xiang Nan was shocked and said, "How could it be? Even with Wei Tuo's palm, the gap between them is so huge." Tingjing smiled and said, "You don't know anything. My Buddhist profound arts are very profound. After learning each kind of martial arts, there are endless changes. The longer you cultivate, the more refined your cultivation will be. The more powerful and diversified the same martial skill will be. Using Wei Tuo palm in the origin realm is just as powerful. If using Wei Tuo palm in the divine martial realm, it would shake the heavens and earth." Tingjing clasped his hands together at Song Mingcheng and said, "Presumably, the Buddhist profound arts that junior brother Mingcheng and the others obtained are not complete. They only have martial skill incantations, but there is no change in the latter half of the incantation. That's why." Xiang Nan patted his forehead and thought it through. It turned out that the owner of the martial tomb had obtained the Buddhist mysterious technique because of some fortuitous encounters. However, he did not obtain all of it. He only obtained the martial skill incantation, but the change incantation was lacking. Tingjing said, "Since Yu Zihao has already learned the Mo finger, then martial nephew Xiang Nan, are you willing to make a mistake and learn the Mo finger once to fight against Yu Zihao?" "All right." Xiang Nan nodded. "No." Meng Dai stood up and said, "To learn the Mo finger, you must first learn the great strength diamond finger, then the flower finger, and then the Mo finger. My brother Xiang Nan doesn't understand the first two martial skills." "No problem, I can teach him." Tingjing smiled. Only then did Meng Dai feel happy. Good. It would be best if they all taught big brother Xiang Nan. Yu Zihao sneered. He simply picked up his shoulder and said, "Let me see how long you need to learn the three-finger techniques. Let me tell you, I only give you 1 day. If you can't learn them, then you will lose." "Why are you setting the time?" Meng Dai said. "Don't mention it. 1 day is enough," Xiang Nan said. "Xiang Nan, listen carefully to the great strength Vajra finger and the finger art." Tingjing whispered in Xiang Nan's ear. Xiang Nan nodded when he heard this and said, "This junior has memorized it." Tingjing did this because he did not want to be biased. Since Yu Zihao had already learned Mo pointed, he could not treat Xiang Nan unfairly. This action made Xiang Nan extremely grateful in his heart. Chapter 375 Creep Before You Walk. Xiang Nan sat cross-legged and began to cultivate the Vajra finger. This great strength diamond finger was the most entry-level Buddhist profound art. It could be said that it relied on the strength of the physical body. Therefore, all martial artists could easily learn this finger technique. Xiang Nan circulated his yuan qi according to the technique of the great strength diamond finger. He discovered that the yuan qi gathered at his fingertips and felt that his fingertips were as firm and sharp as the tip of a sword. He couldn't help but be shocked in his heart. This seemingly simple Vajra finger was actually powerful. But then Xiang Nan discovered that it was very easy to cultivate the Vajra finger, but it was even harder to get to the next level. It took Xiang Nan less than 10 seconds to learn the Vajra finger, but he wanted to make it stronger, but he couldn't complete it. The progress was very slow. Tingjing intentionally instructed Xiang Nan to speak beside Xiang Nan in order to let everyone know something about Buddhist profound arts. The Buddhist profound arts are progressing in an orderly manner. It is like building a foundation for a tall building. Only the stronger the foundation, the higher the foundation can be built. The mortal Dao Mo Ku finger is infinite, but it underestimates the Vajra finger and the flower-picking finger. Therefore, the mortal Dao Mo Ku index has been cultivating bitterly for 10 years, but it has grown slowly. If, on the other hand, you cultivate the Vajra finger and the flower-picking index for 10 years, then the power of the Mo Ku finger will naturally increase dramatically. Xiang Nan's heart trembled as he thought to himself, so that's how it is. Usually, we Buddhist monks need to refine the great strength Vajra finger to perfection before we can learn to pick the flower finger and refine the flower finger to the peak before we can learn the Mo Ku finger, Tingjing added. Martial nephew Xiang Nan is only competing with others now. There is no need to follow this order, just the great strength Vajra finger has a small success, picking a flower finger to peek at the door, you can go to learn Mo Ku finger, although such an act makes Mo Ku finger's power greatly reduced, but it is enough. In other words, Xiang Nan could already start cultivating the flower-picking finger, but even though he said that, Xiang Nan was very unwilling in his heart. Since he wanted to practice, he naturally had to practice better. However, he immediately discovered that it was too difficult. Cultivating the Vajra finger was like using a shovel to dig the ground. The soil at the beginning was very loose, and it was easily dug. The soil was more solid and difficult to dig further, but if he continued to dig further, he would be able to dig into the rock strata. Xiang Nan was at the stage of rock stratum, so no matter how hard he tried to dig, the results would be negligible. According to Fuji, at this stage, the Vajra finger was already a small success. If one wanted to reach a higher level, they would need one word: grind. Grinding is tempering, day after day, year after year of bitter cultivation, like dripping stones piercing through. It's very difficult, but I always feel that I can go a step further with this finger technique. However, if I use the Buddhist scripture to circulate it, I will never be able to use any strength. The Buddhist technique was strong and profound, but it still couldn't achieve the effect that Xiang Nan wanted. At this moment, Xiang Nan came up with a bold idea. Why not use the sun god technique that was even more powerful than the Buddhist technique to activate the Vajra finger? Xiang Nan thought of it and immediately did it. In an instant, a warm sunlight shot down from the sky and enveloped Xiang Nan. This ray of sunlight was called guiding light. It was different from quenching the sun. As long as one circulated the sun god technique, they would be able to draw out warm sunlight. Everyone couldn't help but be surprised when they saw this scene from the direction of the Flying Cloud Temple and of the Profound Sky sect. Xiang Nan was overjoyed. Sure enough, using the sun god technique to activate the Buddhist martial skill was more suitable. He felt the finger power of his Vajra finger suddenly surge, and it was continuously increasing. However, this speed still made Xiang Nan a little unsatisfied. He felt that he could continue to improve, so what was the problem? Heart Sutra. Xiang Nan suddenly thought of this. He had changed the Buddhist technique into the Sun God technique, but the Heart Sutra he was using was still the Heart Sutra that Tingjing had given him. Why didn't he use the Great Freedom Sutra given by the old monk in the 18 dungeons? Thinking of this, Xiang Nan changed the Heart Sutra to the Great Freedom Sutra, and the circulation of the Vajra finger instantly became incomparably smooth. It was like flowing clouds and flowing water. Xiang Nan's attainments towards the Vajra finger continued to rise rapidly. Tingjing felt Xiang Nan's cultivation at close range, but his expression was incomparably shocked. With a wave of his right hand, an ancient bell flew towards him from afar. Xiang Nan closed his eyes and pressed his index finger against the ancient bell before slowly sliding. The ancient bell was an earth-grade elementary weapon, but when Xiang Nan slid it with his finger, pieces of debris were actually scratched off. "This is amazing!" Yun Gui cried out. "Junior brother Xiang Nan has only cultivated this finger, but it is better than the results of my 3 years of hard work." Xiang Nan himself was very happy. He knew that within his current realm, his Vajra finger had already reached a great success. Little success, learning success, great success, and perfection were not defined by the power of finger power, but by the proportion of finger power within a certain realm. For example, at the 4th level of origin return, if Xiang Nan could exert 30% of his finger power, then even if he was a minor success, if he could exert 60% of his finger power, then he would be considered successful in his studies. If he could exert 90% of his finger power, then he would be considered a major success. If he could exert 100% of his power, then he would be considered a complete success. Of course, if a Heaven Origin Realm martial artist used the Vajra finger, even if a Heaven Origin Realm martial artist could only use 30% of their finger power, it would still be stronger than Xiang Nan's 90% finger power at the 4th level of the Origin Realm. This was the effect of the realm. We're only 10% away, and we'll be able to reach perfection. Xiang Nan was still unwilling to give up. In the end, he had to practice everything he said. However, after spending an hour, he was unable to make his finger move any further. He pondered for a while and finally discovered the problem. At this moment, the warm sunlight that enveloped Xiang Nan suddenly turned into a quenching sun. In the quenched state, Xiang Nan used his Vajra finger to stroke the ancient bell. This time, it was not debris, but iron bars. He actually drew a very, very shallow ravine with his flesh and blood on the ancient bell. Perfect. Xiang Nan was overjoyed. Tingjing stared at Xiang Nan with a dumbfounded expression. Junior martial nephew Xiang Nan seems to be born to cultivate my Buddhist profound arts. When this poor monk is at your level, his finger power is not even half of yours. Xiang Nan took a deep breath and then went to learn the flower-picking finger. He also used the Sun God technique and the Great Freedom Scripture to activate the flower-picking finger. Sure enough, he also successfully refined the flower-picking finger and then went to learn the MO-Ko finger. MO-Ko finger more powerful, Xiang Nan used an hour to learn the first finger, an hour to learn the second finger, 2 hours to learn the third finger. After Xiang Nan finished his studies, he realized that it was already evening. "Are you done? I can't wait any longer." Yuziheo urged impatiently. "What are you urging?" Meng Dai scolded. "I don't know how many months your MO-Ko finger has been learning. My brother Xiang Nan has only been learning for half a day, but you can't wait any longer. You're really shameless. What are you talking about?" That Yuziheo was furious. Whoosh! At this moment, Xiang Nan let out a long breath and stood up. All right. Chapter 376 Stir Up a Ruckus. All right. Come on. Yuziheo took a step forward and pointed out the first finger of Mo-ku pointed with his index finger. This finger pointed out a fire mark and shot towards Xiangnan. Xiangnan took a deep breath and pointed out his first finger. This was called entering hell. It was also a fire mark. Xiangnan and Yuziheo's finger power were both in the form of fire marks, but Xiangnan's fire marks were even hotter and more solid. Both of them were fire marks, but Xiangnan's fire mark finger power instantly crushed Yuziheo's finger power with a devastating momentum. That Yuziheo was shocked and hurriedly nodded 3 fingers. These 3 fingers all went up to cancel out the power of Xiangnan's finger. Ha! Big brother Xiangnan is so powerful. 1 finger against 4 fingers. Meng Dai clapped her hands in excitement. This is impossible. This doesn't make sense. Yuziheo's eyes were red with anger, and he refused to accept such a cruel reality. As for Yungue Yundu and his 2 senior brothers, they looked at each other with expressions of shock on their faces. I don't believe it. No matter how strong the first finger is, so what? Look at my second finger. Yuziheo pointed his right middle finger at Xiangnan. This was called entering hell. His finger power was no longer a fire mark, but a flame. Xiangnan also pointed out his second finger, and a finger force flame surged forth. 2 finger force flames collided in the air. Xiangnan's finger force instantly destroyed Yuziheo's finger force. Yuziheo was so frightened that he retreated repeatedly and pointed out 3 fingers. However, these 3 fingers were still unable to destroy Xiangnan's finger force. Yuziheo pointed out his 4th finger, then cancelled out Xiangnan's finger power. At this moment, everyone was even more shocked. When he entered hell, Yuziheo used 4 fingers to cancel out Xiangnan's finger, but when he entered hell, he used 5 fingers to cancel out Xiangnan's finger. Oh! I don't believe it. Yuziheo forcefully used his 3rd finger. Originally, Yuziheo hadn't learned this 3rd finger, but he forcefully used Yuan Qi to activate his finger power. He saw that his thumb pointed out and condensed a flame at his fingertips, followed by a flame beam. However, the flame beam was only about the thickness of a noodle, and it only shot out less than half a meter before collapsing and turning into a spark of flame. Mo-ku pointed. Xiangnan took a step forward, according to Mo-ku pointed incantation, circulating Yuan Qi in a specific way in his meridians. The Yuan Qi condensed at his fingertips, causing the fingertips to instantly shine with dazzling flames. Qi. A beam of flame the thickness of a stick suddenly shot towards Yuziheo. Heavens! Junior brother Xiangnan actually succeeded in cultivating the 3rd finger. Yungue suddenly shouted. Yuziheo didn't even dare to accept the connection. He hurriedly dodged sideways and saw Xiangnan's flaming light beam sweeping over from the ground. Then, he suddenly raised it, and the flaming light beam shot straight into the sky. Yuziheo didn't dodge in time, and even a piece of the back of his long shirt was cut off. I actually succeeded. Xiangnan didn't expect that he would be able to release his 3rd finger. Good, good, Tingjing smiled and clasped her hands together. Brat, what else do you have to say? Meng Dai proudly pointed at Yuziheo and said, You've lost. The people of the Profound Sky sect will leave as promised. Indeed. The abbot of Feiyin Temple also stood up and said to Xiangnan, Martial nephew Xiangnan is truly a martial arts genius. He has learned all of Mo-ku pointed at such a young age. Throughout the history of our Feiyin Temple, only master and martial nephew Xiangnan are capable of doing so. Brother Xiang is so talented. Chen Heng clapped his hands in praise. In the history of the entire Feiyin Temple, there were only 2 people who learned Mo Ku pointed in the shortest time. One was the abbot's master, that was the senior monk of the dragon character generation, and the other was Xiang Nan. I don't believe it. Yu Zihao said angrily, Xiang Nan must have learned Mo Ku pointed a long time ago. Stop pretending here. Stinking monks, do you believe me? Stop spouting nonsense. If you can't do it yourself, can you blame someone else for being stronger than you? Meng Dai ridiculed. However, Tingjing was puzzled and said to Xiang Nan, Junior Marshal Nephew Xiang Nan, let me ask you something. You have to answer honestly. Have you learned Mo Ku pointed before? No, Xiang Nan shook his head. Tingjing said, that's strange. If you haven't learned it, why did you learn all of Mo Ku pointed in half a day? This is against common sense. Xiang Nan was helpless and could only confess that he had secretly used the Sun God technique and the Great Freedom Scripture. The Supreme I technique was nothing, but the Great Freedom Scripture in Feiyin Temple was simply a forbidden technique. After hearing the words, Great Freedom Scripture, all the monks in Feiyin Temple were furious. Xiang Nan knew that it would definitely be disadvantageous for him to speak of this matter, but Tingjing was really good to him. He was willing to sincerely teach him martial skills, and he could not hide it from him. Tingjing's face was ashen, but after a while, he let out a long sigh and said, Junior Brother Tinkong is a sinner of our Feiyin Temple. All disciples of Buddhism are not allowed to approach him, let alone learn all of his martial techniques, including the Heart Sutra. Forget it, Marshal Nephew Xiang Nan is not from our Buddhist sect, so there is no need to be bound by this rule. Hearing this, Xiang Nan finally heaved a sigh of relief. The abbot stepped forward and said, no matter what, this is a Buddhist fate of Marshal Nephew Xiang Nan. It can be seen that he is a person with a deep Buddhist fate. As for the matter of him secretly learning the Heart Sutra with Junior Brother Tinkong, there is no need to pursue it. Tingjing asked Xiang Nan, then, Junior Brother Tinkong, have you passed on your Mo Ku finger? Xiang Nan firmly shook his head, this junior does not dare to lie. Uncle Tinkong only taught me the Great Freedom Scripture. Other than that, he has never taught me a single move. Yes, Junior Brother is quite a rule. Tingjing nodded and said to the Heavenly Profound Sect, you've lost. Please leave. All of you sing together. What a good show. Yu Zihao refused to retreat and said, Xiang Nan said that he had learned the Great Freedom Scripture, so I have to believe him. How do I know that he is not speaking nonsense? You smelly monks must have colluded with Xiang Nan to deceive us. I believe that Xiang Nan learned Mo Ku pointed. Why are you such a rascal? Dream Butterfly stuck her waist and said, not to mention Brother Xiang Nan didn't learn it, so what if he did? Didn't you also learn it? Why would you say someone else? No. Yu Zihao waved his hand and said, if I don't believe it, then I can't. This game doesn't count. Either Xiang Nan speaks the incantation of the Great Freedom Scripture and lets us verify its authenticity, or we'll have another round. Xiang Nan chuckled and said, if you want to learn the Great Freedom Scripture, just say it. There's no need to beat around the bush. Do you want me to teach you the Sun God technique as well? Of course, Yu Zihao knew that Xiang Nan was ridiculing him. He said, stop being sarcastic. Then let's have another round. Tingjing clasped her hands together and asked Yu Zihao, what kind of martial skill do you plan to learn in the next round? Only then will you believe that Marshal Nephew Xiang Nan has not learned it. Yu Zihao rolled his eyes and said, of course, I have to learn the deepest Buddhist profound art before I can believe that Xiang Nan has never learned it. The Supreme God's Buddhist profound art. You're going to secretly learn other people's martial arts again. Meng Dai sneered. Chapter 377 Prajna. Meng Dai originally wanted to say a few more words about Yuziheo, but she rolled her eyes and felt that this was not bad. Xiang Nan could learn another kind of Buddhist profound art. Yuziheo shook his folding fan and said, I heard that Prajna Palm is the best palm technique in Buddhist profound arts. How about Senior Tingjing teach us the mantra of Prajna Palm? Martial uncle, you can't. Xiang Nan was shocked. Prajna Palm is one of the supreme techniques of Feiyin Temple. How can it be easily given to outsiders? It doesn't matter. Tingjing said, there are 9 levels of the Prajna Palm art. The first 3 levels are moves and the last 6 levels are moves. I will only teach you the first level. You two, listen together. Xiang Nan and Yuziheo walked to Tingjing's side and listened carefully. At this moment, Song Mingqing's voice entered Ziheo's ears through the sound transmission technique. He said, we have already obtained the Prajna Palm's incantation from the ancient tomb, but we just lack the transformation incantation. But now, I want the great freedom scripture even more. Think of a way to deceive me. Yuziheo remained calm and memorized Song Mingqing's words in his heart. After passing on the incantation, Tingjing said to Xiang Nan and the others, if you want to practice the Prajna Palm, learn the Vajra Palm first, and then learn the way to a palm. Now, I will teach you these 2 incantations as well. That Yuziheo clearly understood these 2 palm techniques. After listening to the incantation, he was so excited that he directly cultivated the Prajna Palm. Xiang Nan had never learned anything, so he could only start from scratch, starting with the Vajra Palm. The diamond palm and the vigorous diamond finger were both martial skills of the same level, and their principles were similar. It took Xiang Nan less than 10 minutes to learn the Cheng. And then there was way to a palm. This palm technique was more common, and its power was considerable. Xiang Nan was based on the Sun God technique and the Great Freedom Scripture, and he learned it in an hour. This speed was truly unprecedented. Even the abbot and Tingjing felt embarrassed. Even junior brother Tincombe wasn't as accomplished as martial nephew Xiang Nan back then. That Sun God technique is truly unparalleled. The abbot clasped his hands together and sighed with emotion. In the end, Xiang Nan learned Prajna Palm and discovered that it was incomparably profound. At the same time, Xiang Nan mocked the people of the profound sky sect in his heart. He thought to himself, even if Tingjing really taught all the incantations of the Prajna Palm to the profound sky sect, they might not be able to practice it. The reason was very simple. The Prajna Palm was an endless palm technique. The longer one learned it, the more powerful it would be. If he cultivated in seclusion for more than 100 years, he would probably be number 1 in the world after coming out. But martial artists, who would be willing to go into seclusion for 100 years? What's so interesting about living like that? It would be better to enjoy 10 years of freedom. However, monks were different. Their Cyan Lantern ancient Buddha had lived for a lifetime. Monks didn't even want to go home. Only monks in Buddhism would do such bitter cultivation. In any case, Xiang Nan himself was unwilling to learn it unless his family didn't want it anymore and he didn't want to take revenge. Hence, Xiang Nan was not interested in such an unfathomable palm technique. Yuziheo seemed to have completed his training. He stood up excitedly and slapped the ancient bell. A palm wind blew on the ancient bell. With a pu sound, not even a single palm print was left behind. Ah! Yuziheo asked curiously, how could this be? Xiang Nan smiled and thought to himself that Yuzhihao had yet to see through the mysteries of the prajna palm. Unwilling to accept it, Yuzhihao continued to sit down and cultivate. Another hour later, he stood up and struck out with another palm. In the end, a palm wind blew out, and the ancient bell did not even ring. This prajna palm shocks the entire world, yet it only has such a pitiful power. Yuzhihao glared at Tingjing angrily. "Stinking monk, did you pass on my fake incantation?" Tingjing shook her head. The power of the prajna palm depends entirely on one's talent and perception. Some people use it like a gentle breeze to sweep through leaves, while others use it to split open mountains and split the earth. Nonsense, are you saying that my perception is not good enough? Yuzhihao was furious. At this moment, Xiang Nan stood up. He glanced at Yuzhihao lightly and slapped at Gu Zhong. The moment this palm struck out, Xiang Nan felt as if he had been heavily hit. His chest was depressed, and with a loud explosion, he was sent flying backwards by the Yuan Qi, and he spat out a large mouthful of blood. He felt as if all the bones in his body were about to shatter, and the pain was unbearable. The palm power he slapped turned into a Buddha image. It was a monk whose entire body was shrouded in holy Buddhist light. This monk flew out barehandedly and heavily slapped the ancient bell with his palm. The ancient bell emitted a dull sound, and was struck by the palm force, causing it to rapidly retreat on the ground. As for the ancient bell, it was completely distorted by this palm strike. The front of the ancient bell was completely sunk in. When the ancient bell slid more than 30 meters and hit a pillar, the entire ancient bell could no longer see its original shape, like a crushed persimmon. Meng Dai thought that Tingjing had really passed on a fake incantation, causing Xiang Nan to suffer a backlash and get injured, but when she saw the power of Xiang Nan's palm, she couldn't help but open her mouth wide. Good, so powerful. Xiang Nan propped himself up and sat up, feeling incredulous about his palm strike. Because with that palm strike, he actually managed to slap out a 7th level origin returning realm martial skill. Everyone in the front courtyard of Feiyin Temple was moved. Even Song Mingcheng, who was at the half-saint realm, felt his heart pounding wildly. This is the prajna palm. As expected, my reputation is well deserved. If I learned such a palm technique, even if I were to fight against a half-saint second layer expert, it wouldn't be a big deal. Why? Yuzhihao was unwilling and roared, "Why did Xiang Nan and I learn the prajna palm, but the power is different from clouds and mud?" Tingjing clasped his hands together and said, "The prajna palm is profound and profound. This is called the prajna palm." As he spoke, Tingjing slapped out with his palm. As expected, the palm power also condensed into a Buddha image. The Buddha image rushed out barehanded and barefoot. And this is also called the prajna palm. Tingjing clapped his palm again, and a gigantic Buddha suddenly appeared in the sky. The giant Buddha's hand pressed down, as if it wanted to destroy the heavens and the earth. This is still the prajna palm. Tingjing clapped his palm again, and the giant Buddhas in the sky turned into 6. The 6 gigantic Buddhas all slapped down their palms, and the power seemed to be capable of destroying a world. Everyone felt as if they had just woken up from their dreams. It turned out that the martial skill that 6 giant Buddhas used to slap down their palms at the same time was the prajna palm. Previously, when the abbot activated the prajna palm, he was able to give birth to 8 gigantic Buddhas, even more powerful than Tingjing. This time, Yuzhihao really had nothing to say. Whether the prajna palm was strong or weak depended entirely on the martial artist's talent and perception. Moreover, the longer he cultivated, the more powerful he became. Evidently, if Xiang Nan cultivated for 100 years, then Yuziheo would have to cultivate for nearly 1,000 years to catch up. Tingjing said to Xiang Nan, "Junior martial nephew Xiang Nan's Buddhist profound art foundation is not thick, so if you forcefully use the prajna palm, you will definitely suffer a backlash. If you cultivate bitterly in the flying cloud temple and start cultivating from the most basic palm technique, this backlash will naturally decrease. Thank you for your guidance, martial uncle." Xiang Nan hurriedly stood up and bowed. He thought to himself, "I am a disciple of the Haoran sect, how could I abandon the sect's hard work in Feiyin Temple?" However, even so, his prajna palm was too terrifying. He could actually use the 4th level of origin return to unleash the power of the 7th level of origin return. Chapter 378 No Tribulation. "Good brother, how are you?" Dream Butterfly ran up to help Xiang Nan up and whispered in Xiang Nan's ear, "This palm is so powerful, but don't use it randomly. Otherwise, even if you injure 1,000 enemies, you will lose 800 yuan." "I understand." Xiang Nan nodded. "Yuziheo, what else do you have to say?" Xiang Nan asked. Yuziheo's face turned ashen and flushed red, but he gritted his teeth and said, "No. There's another match." "Are you done?" Dream Butterfly said angrily. That Yuziheo said, "Before Xiang Nan came out, I had already defeated 3 little monks and fought 3 consecutive battles. Don't tell me that doesn't count anymore. I won against Xiang Nan after defeating 3 people. I've already suffered a loss. I have to win 2 of Xiang Nan's 3 rounds. The last round doesn't count, this round counts as Xiang Nan's win. As long as Xiang Nan beats me again, I will admit defeat obediently." Everyone knew that Yuziheo was messing around, but what he said was indeed the truth. "Great monk," Yuziheo said to Tingjing, "why don't you teach me the great freedom scripture this time? That would be fair." Tingjing revealed an expression of embarrassment and said, "This poor monk won't." Yuziheo pointed at Tingjing and said angrily, "Nonsense. Even Xiang Nan can learn it, why can't I? Do you want to be biased? Why are Xiang Nan's prajna palm and Mo-ku pointed so powerful? Isn't it because he knows the true scripture of great freedom?" Tingjing shook her head and said, "The great freedom scripture does not belong to Feiyin Temple. It is a heart scripture created by junior brother Tinkong himself. Not to mention a poor monk, even the abbot of this temple cannot do it. Then let Tinkong tyrant come out and teach me." Yuziheo said. Junior apprentice brother Tinkong is a Buddhist sinner and cannot be released. Tinkong said. Then let Xiang Nan teach me. Yuziheo was relentless. Xiang Nan chuckled, "I'm willing to teach you. Do you dare to learn? I just need to make a slight change to the incantation to ensure that you will be practiced to death." Yuziheo's eyes were red with anger, but he laughed loudly, "Ha ha ha ha, this is the Flying Cloud Temple. Xiang Nan can learn, but I can't. You are bullying others with your might, is this the mercy you speak of?" The monks of Feiyin Temple had bitter expressions on their faces. If it were another martial arts sect, they would definitely drive the Profound Sky sect away. Why would we teach you the cultivation method we painstakingly created? Are we crazy? However, the monks of Feiyin Temple were unexpectedly pure-hearted. After being repeatedly accused by Yuziheo, they felt that they were truly not being kind enough to others. Forget it. Tingjing sighed, junior martial nephew Ziheo's words are reasonable. This poor monk is very ashamed, but the great freedom scripture, this poor monk really doesn't know how to do it. If not, I'll teach you too a different kind of peerless technique as compensation, right? What unique technique? Yuziheo regained his spirits and hurriedly asked. After thinking for a while, Tingjing said, "I'll pass on the phaseless tribulation finger to you." Phaseless tribulation finger. Song Mingqing sucked in a breath of cold air. Even though the profound sky sect couldn't find such a finger technique in the ancient martial tomb. Tribulation-free dream butterfly's pupils contracted, and she was so frightened that she took several steps back. She said, "Master once said that she had encountered countless experts in her life. Occasionally, she would lose, but she was never afraid. But she only has one martial skill, the Buddhist mysterious technique, the phaseless tribulation finger." Xiang Nan knew the name of the tribulation-free finger. In his previous life, as Baimukan, he had heard of this kind of finger technique. The phaseless tribulation finger was definitely the strongest finger technique of the Buddhist profound arts. No one. Good, good, good. Yuziheo was overjoyed and nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. That's great. What an unexpected harvest. I didn't expect that even though I wasn't able to deceive the great freedom scripture, I was actually able to deceive the heaven-defying finger technique of the strongest Buddhist profound art. But this poor monk has something to say first. Tingjing said, "The tribulation-free finger attaches more importance to a martial artist's talent and comprehension. Whether one can learn it or not depends entirely on one's own good fortune." Throughout the ages, only 3 people were able to learn the fingerless tribulation finger. One was an eminent monk who created the fingerless tribulation finger, and the other was the founding ancestor of the profound sky sect 3,000 years ago. The last one is the abbot's master. Ah! Song Mingqing was shocked. Our founding ancestor of the heavenly profound sect also had no tribulation finger. Why hasn't it been passed down? Tingjing said, "The reason why your sect's ancestor obtained the formless tribulation finger art is because of a lucky coincidence, so I won't go into details. However, he only learned 50% of the formless tribulation finger's finger power. I heard that the remaining 50% is unable to be learned no matter what. Perhaps this is the reason for his loss. As for the abbot's master, he only learned 1/3 of the tribulation-free finger. He is inferior to your sect's ancestor. This finger technique is too mysterious. Some people can learn it overnight, while others are so poor that they can't even learn it for 100 years. Tingjing said regretfully, "This poor monk has bitterly cultivated the phaseless tribulation finger for 71 years, but he can't even touch the door. I still don't know how powerful the phaseless tribulation finger is. If the 2 martial nephews can learn it today, it will be considered a wish of mine. The 2 of you, come here. I'll teach you the formless tribulation finger art." Xiang Nan and Yuziheo hurriedly leaned forward and respectfully listened. The dream butterfly muttered to herself, "Master said that she was most afraid of the tribulation-free finger. Perhaps she met the abbot's master, the senior monk of the dragon realm, and received a finger. If big brother Xiang Nan can learn, wouldn't master be afraid of him if he saw big brother Xiang Nan in the future?" Thinking of this, Meng Dai couldn't help but cover her mouth and secretly laugh. The formless tribulation finger's incantation was only at the 3rd level. In order for the formless tribulation finger to be passed down for 100 generations, Tingjing had impartially told the 2 of them all about the 3rd level incantation. He had already let go of the sect's grudges. Such a mind was truly a great virtue. When Xiang Nan realized that Tingjing had spoken all of the 3rd level incantations, he became worried. Doing so, wouldn't the profound sky sect be able to learn the unparalleled tribulation finger? If there was one person who could learn it, it would be amazing. However, Yuziheo had a different thought. His eyes rolled slightly and he thought to himself, "Regardless of whether I can learn it or not, I can't tell Song Mingqing about the formless tribulation finger's incantation. If I learn it, then I will look down on you in the same realm and be invincible under the heavens. Naturally, it was impossible to impart the incantation to others. If I can't learn it, then I can't let anyone else learn it. I would rather rot this incantation in my stomach than help others. Xiang Nan used the heart of a gentleman to save the belly of a lowly person. What he thought was that Yuzhiheo would spread the incantation throughout the entire the profound sky sect. He really looked at Yuzhiheo too highly. Afterwards, the two of them carefully studied the three-level incantation and stopped talking. As Xiang Nan pondered, he thought, this finger technique is very different from the prajna palm. The phaseless tribulation finger has not changed its moves, which means that the usage of this finger is very simple. But with such a simple finger technique, why could only 3 of the countless geniuses in the world learn it? The more he thought about it, the more incredulous he felt. Chapter 379 Fall into Madness. This finger technique's 3-level incantation could be said to be a divine art of ghosts and axes. However, the strange thing was that the incantation of this finger technique was like teaching people to commit suicide. Hiss, what's going on? Xiang Nan closed his eyes and was speechless. The first level of the incantation was to teach people how to commit suicide, causing them to self-sever their meridians and die. The second level was to teach people how to destroy their own vitality and use it to turn their lives into dried corpses. And the third level was even more hateful. It was to teach people how to self-destruct their souls, causing their souls to dissipate, and they would never be able to reincarnate. Xiang Nan's entire body was already soaked in cold sweat after pondering over the third level of the incantation. It was truly strange. Yuzhiheo also opened his eyes filled with confusion and fear. Ziheo, tell me the mantra. Song Mingcheng had already sent a voice transmission to his ears, asking about the formless tribulation finger's mantra. Yuzhiheo rolled his eyes and told Song Mingcheng all about the third level incantation. However, the incantation he had given Song Mingcheng had changed some of the words without authorization. Some of the words had been added a little more, while others had been reduced a little. After hearing this, Song Mingcheng was shocked. This is the incantation of the tribulation-free finger? Why does it feel incomplete? Cultivating it feels like self-destruction. Yuzhiheo knew that he was suspected by Song Mingcheng, so he thought to himself, no matter how I explained it, Song Mingcheng would not believe me, so he might as well use Tingjingji's words to deceive him. Yuzhiheo faked his appearance and said, Senior Tingjing, did you remember this incantation wrongly? How can you practice such an incantation? Isn't it suicide? Tingjing said, monks don't lie. The incantation is correct. This kind of finger technique can easily destroy one's own life. This is also one of the reasons why it is so difficult to cultivate. So that's the case, Song Mingcheng nodded thoughtfully and no longer doubted Yuzhiheo. When we get back, I'll tell Sect Master and Qing Zhu about the incantation of the unparalleled tribulation finger. Their talents are unparalleled in the world, and they might be able to learn it. Sigh, if only Bai Mukin was still alive. He has the best talent in the world, so he will definitely be able to learn it. It's a pity. Song Mingcheng shook his head regretfully. He didn't know how Bai Mukin had died. Xiang Nan had no idea what kind of psychological activity the profound sky sect was doing. He was only immersed in finger arts. No matter how scared he was, it was useless. He had to truly learn it. Xiang Nan took a deep breath to overcome the fear in his heart and circulated the first layer of the incantation. However, just as he circulated, he felt the meridians in his entire body ache incomparably. If he circulated a little more, his meridians actually showed signs of being about to rupture. This caused Xiang Nan to hurriedly stop. He circulated the Great Freedom Scripture and then circulated the Formless Tribulation Fingers incantation. In the end, he discovered that there was no improvement. Xiang Nan did not expect that even the Great Freedom Scripture would lose its effectiveness. But, why? Why was a suicidal finger technique the supreme finger technique of Buddhist profound arts? Phaseless tribulation finger, phaseless tribulation, Xiang Nan repeated these words in his heart. Again. If Xiang Nan had any feelings, he would try a second time. This time, the ruthlessness in his heart had risen. No matter what, he had to learn it. When he circulated the incantation, his meridians began to ache again, but he gritted his teeth and continued. The meridians showed signs of cracking, and then continued. His meridians were getting weaker and weaker, and large-scale tears had actually begun to appear on those meridians. Xiang Nan's mind was buzzing with pain, as if someone had stabbed a steel knife into his heart and forcefully twisted it. Ordinary people simply couldn't withstand this kind of torture, so they would definitely give up once they reached this point in their training. However, Xiang Nan refused to give up and gritted his teeth to continue. However, the terrible pain caused his mind to become confused and he actually started to circulate the second level of the incantation. Holy shit! The first level of the incantation hasn't finished yet, but the second level is already running. This time, it's really over. Xiang Nan let out a mournful cry in his heart. He knew that he was in danger. He hurriedly wanted to correct it and recirculate the first level incantation. However, the terrible pain caused his mind to become even more chaotic. He actually recirculated the third level incantation. The three-level incantations worked together. This was the biggest taboo of all martial arts techniques in the world. No martial skill could do this. As such, Xiang Nan felt his meridians collapse, his vitality rapidly flowing away, and even his divine soul was about to shatter. However, at this moment, the power of the tribulation-free finger suddenly began to attack Xiang Nan's innate talent. Talent? Xiang Nan was shocked. Innate talent was an intangible and illusory thing that could not be touched or seen, but the tribulation-free finger was able to attack innate talent. This time, the strength of the attack could shatter an ordinary grade talent. But Xiang Nan managed to hold on. Xiang Nan was still able to withstand the second attack, which could shatter his spiritual grade talent. The strength of the third attack was enough to shatter the heavenly talent, but Xiang Nan was still holding on. The fourth attack directly hit the divine grade talent. At this moment, Xiang Nan's mind buzzed, and he felt his meridians unobstructed. His vitality and soul were rapidly recovering. What? Xiang Nan was stunned and was shocked in his heart. What he needed to cultivate the tribulation-free finger was an impact on his innate talent. He twisted and straightened out, circulating the third-level incantation together, and instead found the right direction. However, even if other people could do this, they were unable to withstand the impact of the innate talent behind them, because only Xiang Nan himself possessed the innate talent of a divine grade. Xiang Nan opened his eyes filled with disbelief. He thought to himself, could it be that I have already mastered it? When he circulated the tribulent fingerless technique again, he felt that everything was flowing like water. The tribulent fingerless technique was like a rope that directly tied his divine talent. Ah! Yuziheo shouted as he stood up. He aimed at the crushed ancient bell and forcefully pointed with his finger. He shouted, "Finger of no phase tribulation." However, this finger did not exert the slightest bit of finger power. Instead, Because Yuziheo forcefully circulated the phaseless tribulation finger, it cracked and blood gushed out of the cracked skin. That Yuziheo was so angry that he clenched his teeth and pointed out another finger. This finger caused Yuziheo's entire body to explode. Fresh blood exploded from his body, turning into a bloody mist. Yuziheo coughed out a large amount of lipstick blood and took 3 steps backwards in a row. His eyes were filled with ferocity, and he still needed to point his 3rd finger. He has already been devoured by the heart demon. He has lost his mind. Tingjing was compassionate. He flew over and pointed between Ziheo's eyebrows. Soft Buddhist Yuan Qi was injected into Ziheo's body. Yuziheo suddenly woke up as if he had just woken up from a dream. He was stunned for a moment before he regained his senses and recalled what he had done just now. He was so frightened that he fell to the ground. Tingjing said to Xiang Nan, "Junior martial nephew Xiang Nan, you have already seen the dangers of the tribulation-free finger. Stop practicing." Xiang Nan stood up thoughtfully and looked at the ancient bell, muttering, "Hiss. I want to give it a try." Chapter 380 The First Wonderful Technique. Big brother Xiang Nan, stop trying. If you can't practice, then you can't. In any case, in this world, there is no one who has practiced the tribulation-free finger. Meng Dai hurriedly dissuaded, "Look at Yuziheo's appearance just now. How frightening. I don't want you to be like him." "Yes, brother Xiang." Chen Hengjuan also advised, "Although the phaseless tribulation finger is powerful, this kind of thing cannot be forced." Xiang Nan shook his head, signaling the 2 of them not to speak. He took a deep breath and turned to face Gu Zhong. Everyone present became nervous, and it seemed that they could not persuade Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan took 3 consecutive deep breaths and pointed at Gu Zhong with his right index finger and middle finger. At this moment, a 10-meter-tall Buddha standing phantom suddenly appeared on Xiang Nan's body. There's a change. Everyone's eyes widened. Could it be that Xiang Nan had truly become the supreme and unparalleled tribulation finger? Otherwise, why would the Buddha phantom appear? However, the image of this Buddha was very strange. The standing Buddha was 10 meters tall, his face was flat, and he didn't have any facial features. Moreover, the Buddha light behind him wasn't too holy, it was more like a layer of dense ghost energy. This was especially true for Xiang Nan, who was standing in the same position as him. Xiang Nan took a step forward, and so did the standing Buddha who enveloped Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan pointed, and the Buddha also pointed. As Xiang Nan pointed down, a pitch-black beam of light suddenly shot out from his fingertips. After that beam of light struck the ancient bell, it actually left the ancient bell motionless. There was not even the sound of finger force colliding with the ancient bell. Everyone present looked at each other, not even the abbot and Tingjing could understand. This was because no one here had ever seen the phaseless tribulation finger, and no one had ever practiced it. Could it be that he failed? Meng Dai tilted her head and asked curiously. However, Xiang Nan's expression changed drastically, because he discovered that after he pointed out a finger, his realm had actually retreated by 1 point. From the early stage of the 4th level of origin return to the late stage of the 3rd level of origin return. However, the finger power of the tribulation-free finger had merged into the ancient bell, and there was no damage. But then, everyone was shocked. This was because the ancient bell was decaying at a speed visible to the naked eye. The ancient clockwork was quickly stained with rust. A mountain breeze blew over, and the rust actually peeled off in large patches. In less than 10 seconds, the entire ancient bell turned into a ball of withered iron powder and fell to the ground. Ah! Everyone's eyes widened in shock. At this moment, Xiang Nan was curious and released the phaseless tribulation finger at Yuziheo again. What are you doing? No. Yuziheo was scared out of his wits, but he was instantly hit by the black finger force. That Yuziheo was so frightened that he almost went crazy. He hurriedly touched his body, deeply afraid that he would be rotted into a dried corpse like Gu Zhong. However, in reality, his body did not rot. Instead, his realm had plummeted. From the 5th level of origin return to the 4th level of origin return. What did you do? Yuziheo shouted at Xiang Nan, my realm. My realm has fallen. At the same time, this second finger also lowered Xiang Nan's cultivation level from the late stage of the 3 great origins to the middle stage of the 3 great origins. So that's the case. Xiang Nan suddenly understood that the phaseless tribulation finger could actually lower the enemy's cultivation level. However, this price was not equal. If he lowered his cultivation by half, the enemy would be reduced by an entire level. Xiang Nan felt that it was incomparably novel and pointed at Yuziheo. That Yuziheo hastily dodged, but he was still hit by the phaseless tribulation finger. His realm had plummeted from the 4th level of origin return to the 3rd level of origin return. Xiang Nan's realm had fallen from the middle stage of the 3rd level of the origin realm to the early stage of the 3rd level of the origin realm. Ah! Yuziheo gritted his teeth angrily and said, my realm. The realm that I painstakingly cultivate. Xiang Nan, you have a vicious heart. Everyone present was drenched in cold sweat. How dare you use such an evil technique to injure a disciple of the heavenly profound sect? Song Mingqing jumped into the air and was about to attack Xiang Nan. Only then did Xiang Nan regain his senses and hurriedly pointed his finger at Song Mingqing. You dare! Put your hand down. Don't aim at me. Song Mingqing shuddered in fright. Of course, Song Mingqing could kill Xiang Nan with a single palm strike, but if he did so, perhaps he would be hit by the phaseless tribulation finger. He was a half-saint first-layer expert. Every time an expert of this realm advanced to a higher realm, it would be extremely difficult. It was unknown how much suffering they would have to endure and how many years of cultivation they would have to cultivate before they could take a step forward. If Xiang Nan taught him how to become a late divine martial realm expert, then he would truly be worse off than dead. Song Mingqing did not dare to fight with Xiang Nan, which was why such an absurd scene had occurred. A half-saint expert was actually frightened by a return to the origin realm kid and hid everywhere. Song Mingqing was only worried about himself, so how could he have the mood to observe Xiang Nan's realm? He did not know that Xiang Nan's realm had actually decreased. Congratulations, martial nephew Xiang Nan, for successfully cultivating the supreme unparalleled tribulation finger. Tingjing let out a long sigh and said, there are so many Buddhist disciples in my temple. Together, they are not as fortunate as a secular person like you. Xiang Nan was also very happy in his heart. He immediately cupped his fists and bowed to Tingjing. Thank you for your guidance, senior. Good job. Good job. Let's go. Song Mingqing pointed at the group of monks, trembling as he put down a harsh sentence and led the Sky Profound Sect's people away. Ha, big brother Xiang Nan, you've really mastered the tribulation-free finger. Meng Dai ran over happily. Xiang Nan smiled and pointed at Dream Butterfly. The Dream Butterfly was instantly pierced through by the black finger force, causing her entire body to be shocked. Immediately after, her face turned deathly pale and she said in a trembling voice, Good brother, what are you doing? I treat you so well, why do you have to do this to me? Dream Butterfly could sense that her cultivation had declined from the 5th level of the Heavenly Yuan realm to the 4th level of the Heavenly Yuan realm. On the other hand, Xiang Nan's realm had fallen to the mid-2nd level of the Origin Return. The monks were also puzzled by Xiang Nan's actions. Xiang Nan smiled at Meng Dai and said, "So you are afraid sometimes, but don't worry. This is only temporary. Just now, I already knew that the phaseless tribulation finger is a finger technique that requires me to sacrifice half of my cultivation realm to lower the enemy's cultivation realm by 1. However, that is not permanent. It can only last for a few minutes. After a few minutes, we will all return to our original state." Hearing this, Dream Butterfly patted her chest and said with great danger. The abbot walked up and said, "Martial nephew Xiang Nan, since ancient times, you are the 4th person to practice the finger of tribulation. This is your Buddhist destiny. It seems like you and my flying cloud temple really have a great fate." Chen Heng laughed heartily. The phaseless tribulation finger is truly the #1 wondrous skill in the world. With this kind of finger technique, wouldn't Brother Xiang be invincible under the heavens? You can't say that either. Xiang Nan shook his head. Firstly, the energy consumed by the phaseless tribulation finger is very terrifying. Secondly, my realm is also limited. I can't meet experts who exceed my realm by too much. Before I can completely lower my cultivation base, my own cultivation base has already disappeared. Tingjing nodded and said, "That's right, and the phaseless tribulation finger is more suitable for fighting alone. If martial nephew Xiang Nan has a second enemy, that would be terrible." "Yes." Xiang Nan sighed. The realms of the two of them were lowered together, and if a third person interfered, the result could be imagined. Fortunately, the phaseless tribulation finger was just like Tingjing had said. When fighting alone, it could receive miraculous results. It could also be considered Xiang Nan's trump card for killing weapons. Junior Martial Nephew Xiang Nan, you helped us drive away the profound sky sect. This time, you truly have boundless merits. Tingjing said. Xiang Nan hurriedly said humbly, "This junior does not dare to claim credit. Senior Full Screen imparted Buddhist profound arts to this junior, so this junior can have such an opportunity. However, this junior has indeed come to Feiyin Temple to ask for something." Xiang Nan took out 3 copies of the Haran sect's martial arts and said, "This junior actually wants to exchange martial arts with Feiyin Temple." In the distance, in the sky. Ah! Ming Qing Lao, my realm has recovered. Yuziheo was overjoyed. Oh! Song Mingqing raised his eyebrows and said, "So that phaseless tribulation finger isn't meant to permanently lower one's cultivation realm. That's good. If there really is a finger technique that can permanently lower one's cultivation realm, then Xiang Nan Zhen will be invincible in the world. Then should we go back?" Yuziheo gritted his teeth and said. Song Mingqing shook his head and said, "If we go back, Feiyin Temple will definitely not trade with us again. However, we have obtained the formless tribulation finger's incantation this time, which is more beneficial than we expected. Let's go back to the 9 firmaments continent first and tell the sect master the formless tribulation finger's incantation." Novel Empire. Immortal God of Battle.